He was girded on, and with that between his legs and his tark heels, our once and only brag spear, he clanked, to my clinking, from toes to top, every inch of an immortal. He had not walked over a pentiad pair of parsecs from his asylum, when, at the turning of Shinshon Lantern, near St. Bowery's without his walls, he came, seconding to the 1/1 of his prophecies, amnis limina permanent, upon the most unconsciously boggy-looking stream he ever locked his eyes with. Out of the collions it took a rise by daubing itself ninon. It looked little, and it smelt of brown, and it thought in narrows, and it talked so shallow. And as it rin, it dribbled like any lively My, me and me, little down bream, don't I love thee? And I declare, what was there on the yonder bank of the stream, that would be a river, parched on a limb of the olum, bolt downright, but the gripes. And, no doubt, he was fit to be dried, for why had he not been having the juice of his times? His pips had been neatly all drowned on him, his pulps were charging odours every older minute, he was quickly forgetting the dresser's disdain on the fly-leaf of his fronds, and he was quietly forgiving the bailiff's distrain onto the bulk side of his pill de pompe. In all his specious heavings, as belived by Optimus Maximus, the Mookse had never seen his Dubville brooder on low so nigh to a pickle. Adrian, that was the Mookse's now's assumption home, stuck still fizz-a-fizz to the gripes, in an accessit of orignation. But all Mookse must a mood end, much as all routes, austere ways or westers ways, in roaming run through Rome. Hic sore a stone, singularly illud, and on hoc stone setter sat hoc sate, which it filled quite preposterously, and by acclamatation, to its fullest justatorium, and whereupon, with his unfallible encyclicling upon his alloyable, due patriarch of the West, and the atomist sprinkled pederect he always walked with, Deus dedit, cheek by jowl with his fisherman's blag, bellua triumphanes, his every way added to Wallet's collection, for ye longer he lived, ye broader he be taught of it, the fetter, the sum, and the haul it cost. He looked the first and last Micah-like laicness of Quartus the 5th, and Quintus the 6th, and Sixtus the 7th, giving all night sitting to Leo the faulty pint. Good appetitus, Sir Mookse. How do you do it? Cheeped the gripes, in a very wiggy Mardalenian voice, and the jackasses all within ball laughed and brayed for his intentions, for they knew their sly-toed Lowry now. I am rarum hominum blessed to see you, my dear Mookse. Will you not perhaps tell me everything, if you are pleased, Sanity? All about Orn and Lithiel, and also all and all about Orn and Lysias, nay? Think of it. O miserendissimus retempta, a gripes. Rats, bellowed the Mookse most telesphorously, the concionator, and the Sissimuses and the Zosimuses in their Roban houses quailed to hear his tardy noise at all, for you cannot wake a silken mouse out of a horse ear. Blast yourself and your anatomy inferioribus. No, hang you for an animal rurale. I am superbly in my supremest pontiff. Abase, you baldy queens. Gather behind me, satraps. Rots. I am till infinity obliged with you, bowed the gripes, his wine having gone to his palfrey head. I am still always having a wish on all my extremities. By the watch, what is the time, pace? Figure it. The pining peaver to a Mookse. Ask my index, mund my Achilles, swell my obolum, wash up my nays serene, answered the Mookse, rapidly by turning Clement, Urban, Eugenius, and Celestian in the foremost of good groggery humours. Quote a whore? That is quite about what I came on my missions, with my intentions laudabiliter to settle with you, Barbaros. Let Thor be Orlog, let Pauline be Irene, let you be beaten, and let me be Los Angeles. Now measure your length, now estimate my capacity. Well, Sour, is this space of our couple of hours two-dimensional for you, temporizer? Will you give you up? Como? Fuertit? Sancta Patientia. You should have heard the voice that answered him. culla Rosalina. I was just thinking upon that, sweet Mookse, but for all the rime on my raisins, if I can now make my submission, I cannot give you up, the gripes whimpered from nethermost of his one hope. I shall so bound be will so thou to says it. My tumble loudy bullocker is my own, my velicity is too fit in one stock end, and my special in excelsis, the belowing things above. But I will never be abler to tell your honoriousness. Here he near lost his limb, though my cocked father was but a pseudo-waiter, whose cloak you wear. Incredible. Well, hear the inevitable. Your temple, sus in cribro, semper excommunic cambi ambisumus, to Gurius in Europe or to Curius in ashes, nova Rome, my creature, believe and blives. My building space in Leonine city is always to let to Leon-like men, the Mookse, in a most consisterous allocution, pontifically, with immediate jurisdiction constantinately concluded. What a crammer for the shape-rocked gripes! And I regret to proclaim that it is out of my temporal to help you from being killed by inches. What a thrust! As we first met each other, knew where so early. Poor little sow-sieved, sub-squashed gripes. I begin to feel contemption for him. My side, thank decretals, is as safe as Mother Our's houses, he continued, and I can see from my holy dome what it is to be wholly sane. Union jock and be joined to yock. Paris is to say crucicrux belongs to him who parises himself. And there I must leave you subject for the pressing. I can prove that against you. Wait a momentum, mine good enemy, or Cospel's not our star. I bet you this dozen odd. This voluminous dozen odd. Quas primas, but 'tis bitter to comport my knowledge's fructos of tomes. Elevating to give pint to his blick, his jewelled pederect to the all-misty ceiling, he lucky struck blue-illed out of a few should-be santillants, a cloister of starabouts over Maples, a Lucioles in Teresa Street, and a stop sign before Sophie Barrett's. He gathered together the odds docents of his volumes, Gresque, Latin, and Russie Cruction, onto the laps of his prolegs, into umfult one scuppered, and sat about his wider proof. He proved it well, who on earth dry and drysic times, and vreniament to cess, to the extinction of Nicklaus altogether. Nicklaus Alopecius having been the once Gripes's pop-willed nimbum, by Euclidius and Anaxagoras, and Mumpson and Thumpson, by Orasmus and by Amenius, by Anacletus the Jew, and by Malachi the Augurer, and by the Capon's collection, and after that, with Cheeky's gelatin, and all-day brandy's formalon, he reproved it altogether, when not in that order, sundering in some different order, alter 330 and 100 times, by the binomial diagram, and the Penic walls, and the Ind, the Inkelspill legends, and the rule of the hoop, and the blessings of expedience, and the judicants of Pontius Pilatus, and all the mummy scripts in sick-box junk room, and the chapters for the cunning of the chapters of the conning fox by tale. While that Mookse, with pre-procession and with pro-procession, duplicitly and diplacidly, was promulgating ipso facts and sad contrast, this rascally Gripus, he had all but seceded in monophysicking his ill subordinates. But as awful as he had caught his base Seminoius Sarchnactiers to combuxinate upon the syllipses of his aspilouts, and the ache-poor users of his Hagion Numax to sin erethetize with the bred chestviousness of his sweet ovula ducos, so farfully the logarthods of his sacullaries were fond at variance with the synodols of his Sampulium, and his Babskis Nepogrisimost got the hoof from his Filioquus. After 1,000 years, O gripes, con my sheepskins, ya will be blind to the world, enscade Mookse the pious. After 1,000 years, answered Gripes the Gregory, be the goat of Mahomet's, yours may be still, O Mookse, more both-eared. Us shall be chosen as the first of the last by the electress of Vale Hollow, observed the Mookse nobly, for par the unicum of Eligiax, us Sam in our stabulary, and that is what Ruby and Roby fall for, bliss him. The pills, the nasal wash, Yardleys, the army man cut, as British as Bond strict, and as straight cut as when that broken arch traveller from Newzoland. We, confused the gripes, limply, shall not even be the last of the first, we hope, when oust are visitated by the veiled horror. And, he added, me are relying entirely, see the 43rd of Elizabeth, on the weightiness of Mere's breath, Puffet. On sight-bared embosher, relentless foe to social and business success. Uri Aled. It might have been a happy evening, but... And they vituperated each other, canis et coluba, with the wildest ever wielded since Taristinus lashed Pisesphaltium. Unicorn, ungulant, uvuloid, usky and bull folly answered volleyball. Nuvoletta, in her light dress, spun of Sistine shimmers, was looking down on them, leaning over the banisters and listening all she childishly could. How she was brightened when Shoulder-ups and his globering hawks guyed his welkin-stuck, and how she was overcloosed when Knees-knobs on his swivel was make-acting such a pulse of himself. She was alone. All her Newbid companions were a-sleeping with the squirrels. Their miver, Mrs. Moonan, was off in the first quarter, scrubbing the back steps of number 28. Fover, that scanned, he was up in Norwood's soca parlour, eating oceans of Voking's blemish. Nuvoletta listened as she reflected herself, though the heavenly one with his constellatria and his emanation stood between, and she tried all she tried to make the Mookse look up at her. But he was for too adiaptotously far-seeing, and to make the gripes hear how coy she could be, though he was much too systematically auricular about his ends to heed her. But it was all miles vapour moist. Not even her faint reflection, Nuvoluccia, could they toke their noses off, for their minds, with intrepified fate and bungless curiosity, were conclaved with Heliogoblius and Commodus and Enobarbarus, and whatever the coordinal dickens they did, as their damp roush of papyrs and bookstubs said. As if that was their spiration, as if theirs could duiperate her queendom, as if she would be third party to search on search proceedings. She tried all the winsome, wansome ways her four winds had taught her. She tossed her sfuma stelliacinus hair like la princesse de la petite Bretagne, and she rounded her mignon's arms like Mrs. Cornwallis West, and she smiled over herself like the beauty of the image of the pose of the daughter of the Queen of the Emperor of Ireland, and she sighed after herself as were she born to bride with Tristis Tristi or Tristissimus. But sweet Madonine, she might fair as well have carried her daisies worth to Florida. For the Mookse, a dog-mad aconite, were not a moose, and the gripes, a doubly-boused Catholic, was painfully obliviscent. I see, she sighed, there are manner. The sis of the wisp of the sigh of the soft thing at the stir of her grosso orondo of a long one in Midias reeds, and shades began to glitter along the banks, greepsing dusk unto dusk, and it was as glooming as gloaming could be in the waste of all peaceable worlds. Metamnesia was all sunum coloriform brune, Cytherea spien and Olan, inemorous and unnumerous. The Mookse had a sound eyes right, but he could not all hear. The gripes had light ears left, yet he could but ill see. He ceased, and he ceased, tongue and trit, and it was never so ever so dusk of both of them. But still move thought on the deeps of the unths he would profound, come the morrocks, and still gry field of the scripes he would escape if by grace he had luck in hopes. Oh, how it was dusk! From Valle Moria to Gracia Plena, dormimus echo, adieu, Adieu. It was so dusk that the tears of night began to fall, first by ones and twos, then by threes and fours, at last by fives and sixes of sevens, for the tired ones were waking, as we weep now with them. Oh, 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 pauvre appui. Then there came down, to the thither bank, a woman of no appearance. I believe she was a black with chills at her feet, and she gathered up his hoariness the Mookse metamorphally, where he was spread, and carried him away to her invisible dwelling, that heights Aquila Rapax, for he was the holy sacred Solomon Poshup's spit of her Boshup's apron. So, you see, the Mookse, he had reason as I knew, and you knew, and he knew all along. And there came down to the hither bank a woman to all important, though they say that she was comely, spite the cold in her heed. And, for he was as like it as blow it to a hawker's hank, she plucked down the gripes, torn panicky autotone, in anger from his limb, and carried away its beatitubes with her, to her unseen shieling. It is de rore celi. And so the poor gripes got wrong, for that is always how a gripes is, always was, and always will be, and it was never so thoughtful of either of them. And there were left now an only elm tree, and but a stone, palled with Pietrus, sier but Saul. Oh, yes, and Nuvoletta, alas. Then Nuvoletta reflected for the last time in her little long life, and she made up all her myriads of drifting minds in one. She cancelled all her engagements. She climbed over the banisters. She gave a childy, cloudy cry, Nuée, nuée. A light dress fluttered. She was gone. And into the river that had been a stream, for 1,000 of tears had gone in her, and come on her, and she was stout and struck on dancing, and her muddied name was Mrs. Liffey. There fell a tear, a single tear, the loveliest of all tears. I mean for those Krylov Fables fans, who are keen on the pretty commonplace sort of thing you meet by Hope Harrods, for it was a leap tear. But the river tripped on her by and by, lapping as though her heart was brook. Why, way, oh way, I so silly to be flowing, but I no canna stay. No applause, please, bast. The Rome Scott Nattle Shaker will go round your circulation in due dorsus. Alla boy, Major, I'll take your reactions in another place after themes. Nolan Brown, you may now leave the classroom. Joe Peters, Fox. As I have now successfully explained to you my own natural-born rations, which are even in excise of my vaulty brain, ensure me that I am a mouth's more deserving case by genius. I feel in sympathos for my ever-devoted friend and half-a-loaf unwashed, Knackers Nyokovich, darling Jem, darling small fox, horror show. I could love that man like my own Ambo for being so Bailey Chiaver, though he's an awful curulass, and I must slave to methodiousness. I want him to go and live like a Theobald, in charge of the Night Brigade on Tristan da Cunha, Isle of Man Overboard, where he'll make number 106 and be near inaccessible. The meeting of mahoganies by the waves rementions me that this exposed site, though it pines for an umbrella of its own, and needs a shelter belt of the true service sort to keep its bowls clean, the weeping beaches, Pissia and Tilia, are in a wild state about it, ought to be classified, as Cricket Butt Willowm and his 2 nurserymen advisers suggested, under genus inexhaustible, when we refloat upon all the butternats, sweet gum, and manna ash, red cetera, which is so purulent there, as if there was hawthorns in Corachesa, which ought to look as plain as a lodgepole to anybody until we are introduced to that Pinetacoteca of Verni Rubius, where the Diodati is pictured for us in a pure stand, which we do not doubt has a habitat of doing, but without those self-sown seedlings, which are a species of proof that the largest individual can occur at or in an elevation such as East Connor Hillock, where it mixes with fulthications and common sallies and is tender. Vox populus, as we say in Hickory Hockory, and I wish we had some more glasses of arborvitae. Why, wrote by the roadside, or on over alum pot. All the man White Beaver is Daccio. He ought to go away for a change of ideas, and he'd have a world of things to look back on. Do, sweet Daniel. If I weren't a Jones in myself, I'd elect myself to be his dolphin in the wilds below, because he is such a bare-footed rubber with my super socks pulled over his face, which I publicked in my best back garden for the latification of siderodromites and to the irony of the stars. You will say it is most un-English, and I shall hope to hear that you will not be wrong about it. But I, further, feeling a bit husky in my truths. Will you please come over and let us more mergeously to each as other down below our vices? I am underheard by old Bill Faust. Wilsh is full of Kirks. The cool skittle is Philip Debdenite. Mr. Whist is there over behind the want-not. Wilsh and Whist are as thick as thins odder as Faust on the Debdenite. Sconosciuto estas pretelata pizzo malgranda, li legas al scientia chambro, quelque foie functas, quelque foie shrumpa shultroi. Hodian kiel vi fartas, mia nigra signoro. And, from the point of fun, where I am crying to arrive you at, they are on all four as foible-minded as you can feel they are fable-bodied. My heeders will recoil with a great leisure how, at the outbreak, before trespassing on the space question, where even Michelangelines have fooled to dread, I proved to myself, as to your satisfaction, how his abject, all through, the quick quid of Professor Ciondolone's too frequently hypothecated Betlermensch is nothing so much more than a mere cash dime, however genteel he may want ours, if we please. I am speaking to us in the second person. For to this graded intellectuals, dime is cash, and the cash system, you must not be allowed to forget that this is all contained, I mean the system, in the dog marks of Origen on Spurios, means that I cannot now have or not have a piece of cheaps in your pocket at the same time and with the same manners as you can now not half or half the cheek a piece I've in mind, unless Burrus and Caseous have not or not have simultaneously disentangled themselves, sell dear to soul there, once in the dairy days of by and by. Burrus, let us like to imagine, is a genuine prime, the real choice, full of natural grease, the mildest of milk stuffs, yet unbeaten as a ricicide, and, of course, obsoletely unadulterous, whereat Caseous is obviously the revise of him, and, in fact, not an ideal choose by any means, though the better man of the two is meltingly addicted to the more casual side of the arrivalist case, and, let me say it at once, as zealous over him as is passably he. The same home and history seeks and hidepence, which we used to be reading for our pre-purgatory, hot, shot, till Duddy shut the shopper up, and Mutty, poor Mutty, brought us our poor suppy. Ah, who, how, in Acetius, and Oleosus, and Celius Volatilis, and Petrus Papricus. Our old party quite united round the slat bowl at Commons. Pharaoh Salamos himself, and that sprog of a Patersill, and his sprig of thyme, and a dozen of the Murphy buds, and a score and more of the hot young capels, and Latussia in her green sleeves, and you two and me three, twinsome bibs but handsome eights, like Shakespeare and eggs. But there's many a split pretext bowl and jowl, and snob screwing that cork shot. To understand this as well as you can, feeling how backward you are in your down-to-the-ground benches, I have completed the following arrangement for the coarse use of stools, and if I don't make away with you, I'm beyond Caesar out nullist. The older scissors, tyrants, regicide is too good for you, become unbearable from age. The compositor of the farce of Destiny, however, makes a thunpledrum mistake by letting off this pianoforte effect as his first act, as that is where the Duke comes in. Having been sort of nine-knived and chewly removed, This soldier-author Batman, for all his commentaryism, is just another of those soft-seized bubbles who never quite got the Sandhurst out of his eyes, so that the champagne he draws for us is as flop as a plan, Krieg. The twin Freer types are billed to make their reappearance as the new neck and knife knick-knocks on the deserted Champ de Bouteille. A most cursory reading into the Persicuralian's hostelry shows us how Phonomagula picked up that proper noumen out of a collection of prefixes, though to the Permienting connoisseur, the Cucusian offsprung of this son of a cock is as satin as there's a tub in Tobolsk, Ostiac de la Fogel Marina. But that I deny the fact of wanton to West Point, I could paint you to that butter, cheese it, if you had some wash. Mord they alive, oh me no-nonsense. Why, the case is as inessive and impossive as Kesem hands. Their interlocutive is conprovocative, just as every hazzy hates to having a has-been in her nose. Caseous may bethink himself a thought of a caviller, but Burrus has the richly rounded head that goes best with off-thinking defensive fideism. He has the lack of wisdom under every dent in his laughter, while the other fellows only vesi milky indeed, my mite, laughing over the linnets and weeping off the union. He hisn't the hay, or he listened the log, pooh-hoo, and each night Sim Mrs. Mand, he winks he had the Sam again. It was aptly and corrigidly stated, and it is royally needless for one ex ungue leonem to say by whom, that his seeings-craft was that clarity as were the whole borough of Petersburg to be ever launched over him. Pitch batch he could still make out with his augstrich the green mote in Ireland's eye. Let me sell you the full troth of Burrus when he wore a yunker. Here it is, and charming too in 6x7. A cleanly line, by the gods, a king off duty and a jaw forever. And what a cheery, ripe outlook! Good help medius fideius. If I were to speak my whole mouthful to Arinam about it, you should call me the ormuzd aliment in your midst of fame. Eat ye up, heat ye up, sings the summon in the psalm. Buterum et mel comedet ut sciat reprobare malum et eligere bonum. This, of course, also explains why we were taught to play in the childhood, Der Hänsli ist dein Butterbrot, mein Butterbrot, und Kirby ist dein Stinkenkot. Ja, ja, ja. This, in fact, just to show you, is Caseous, the brother Scotch, or poor Tyrone. A hole or two, the high stinks aforefelt, and any go prigging worms. Cheese, you complain, and hi, must say you are not wholly in the wrong. Thus we cannot escape our likes and mislikes, exiles or ambushiers, beggar and neighbour, and, this is where the dime show advertisers advance the temporal relief plea, let us be tolerant of antipathies. Next quovis burro num fit mercasius. I am not hereby giving my final endorsement to the learned ignorance of the Cusanus philosophism, in which old Nicholas pegs it down that the smarter the spin of the top, the sounder the span of the button. What the worthy old auberginist ought to have meant was, the more stolidly immobile in space appears to me the bottom which is presented to use in time by the top primo mobilisque, etc. And I shall be misunderstood if understood to give an unconditional sine quam to the heroicized furibouts of the lowness theory, or at any rate of that substrate of apart from his theory, where the Theophil swores that on principle he was the pointing start of his odios by comparison, and that whiles eggs will fall cheapened all over the world, the bure will be dear on the brie. Now, while I am not out now to be taken up as unintentionally recommending the Silkeborg Tyron Dynamon machine for the more economical helixtrolysis of those ambo-adipates until I can find space to look into myself a little more closely, first I shall go on with my decisions after having shown to you in good time how both products of our social stomach, the excellent Dr. Burrowman, I noticed, by the way, from his emended food theory, has been carefully digesting the very wholesome criticism I helped him to in my Princeps edition, which is all so much to the cud, are mutually polarized the incompatibility of any delusional acting as ambivalent to the fixation of his pivotism. Positing, as above, two males pools, the one the picture of the other, and the ombre the scotia of the one, and looking wantingly around our undistributed middle between males, we feel we must wastefully warn to female to focus, and on this stage there pleasantly appears the cowrie maid M, whom we shall often meet below, who introduces herself upon us at some precise hour, which we shall again agree to call absolute zero, or the babbling pump of Platonism. And so, like that former son of Achish who went up and out to found his farmer's ashes, we come down home gently on our own turned-about asses to meet Margarine. We now romp through a period of pure lyricism of shame-bred music. Technologically, let me say, the appetizing entry of this subject on a full chest of viols is plumply putting the carp before d'oeuvre off, evidenced by such words in distress as, "I cream for thee, sweet Margarine," and the more hopeful, "O Margarina, still in the bowl is left a lump of gold." Correspondents, by the way, will keep on asking me what is the correct garnish to serve drachines with. Tansy sauce. Enough. The pawn-breaking pathos of the first of these shoddy pieces reveals it as a Caseous effort. Burrus's bit is often used for a toast. Craniculture can tell us very precisely indeed how and why this particular streak of yellow silver first appeared on, not in, the bowl, that is to say, the human head, bald, black, bronze, brown, brindled, betteraved, or blanche-manged, where it might be usefully compared with an earwig on a full bottom. I am offering this to Signorina Cuticura, and I intend to take it up and bring it under the notice of Herr Harleen by way of diverting his attentions. Of course, the unskilled singer continues to pervert our wiser ears by subordinating the space element, that is, to sing the aria to the time factor, which ought to be killed il tempore. I should advise any unborn singer who may still be among my heeders to forget her temporal diaphragm at home, the best thing that could happen to it, and attack the roulade with a swift corpo di glottide to the lug. Though Mass, I will insist, was reclined from overdoing this, his recovery often being slow, and then, on the third dead beat, to close her eyes, and I open her oath, and see what spice I may send her. How? Cease thee, cantatrici. I fain would be solo, arouse thee, my valour, and say for air, my troubadour. I shall have a word to say in a few yards about the acoustic and architectural management of the tone hall, but as ours is a vivarius, where one plant's breath is a lunger planner's bicent, and you may not care for argon, it will be very convenient for me, for the emolument, to pursue Burrus and Caseous for a rung or two up their isoscellating biangle. Every admirer has seen my goulash of Marge. She is so like the sister, you don't know, and they both dress alike, which I titled The Very Picture of a Needless Woman, which in the presence ornates our national cruet stand. This genre of portraiture of changes of mind, in order to be truly torse, should evoke the bush soul of females, so I am leaving it to the experienced victim to complete the general suggestion by the mental addition of a wallopy bound, or, should the zoological zealot prefer it, a congaroo teal. The hat boxes which composed Romba, Lady Trabazond, Marge in her excelsis, also comprise the climactogram up which B and C may fondly be imagined ascending, and are suggestive of gentlemen's spring modes, these modes carrying us back to the superimposed clay layers of Eocene and Pleistocene formation, and the gradual morphological changes in our body politic, which Professor Ebayi Ahuri of Philadespoines Ill, whose blue butter bust I have just given his coup de grace to, neatly names a boîte à surprise. The boxes, if I may break the subject gently, are worth about 4p per box, but I am inventing a more patent process, foolproof and perfect. I should like to ask that Sherlock Holmes person, who is out for removing the roofs of our criminal classics, by what deductio ad dominum he hopes de tacto to detect anything, unless he happens of himself movibile tectu to have a slayed off, after which they can be reduced to a fragment of their true crust by even the youngest of Margies, if she will take place to be seated, and smile if I please. Now there can be no question about it either, that I, having done as much, having quite got the size of that demilitary young female, we will continue to call her Marge, whose types may be met with in any public garden wearing a very dressy affair known as an Ethel of instep length, and with a real fur reduced to 3 9 and muffin cap to tone. They are angel skinned this fall, ostentatiously hemming apologetically over the shirtness of some sweet garment, when she is not sitting on all the free benches, avidly reading about it, but obediently on the lookout for him, or so thrilled about the best-dressed dolly pram and beautiful elbow competition, or at the movies swallowing sobs and blowing mixed mixkits over Child Chaplin's latest, or on the verge of the gutter with some bobbed-hair, brief-frocked baby-mouthed toddler. The Smythe Smythes now keep 2 domestics and aspire to 3 male ones, a shover, a butt-legger, and a secretary, held hostage at arm's length, teaching his infant majesty how to make waters worse. I am closely watching Master Pules, as I have reasons to suspect from my post that her little man is a secondary school teacher under the boards of education, a voted disciple of Infantulus, who is being utilized thus publicly by the seducente infanta to conceal her own more masculine personality by flaunting frivolish finery over men's inside clothes, for the femininity of that tota mulia will always lack the musculink of a verum virum. My solutions for the proper parturience of matres and the education of micturious mites must stand over from the moment till I tackle this tickler hussy for occupying my attentions. Margarina, she's very fond of Burrus, but a lick and a lack, she's very fond of cheese. The important influence exercised on everything by this East Asian import has not been till now fully flavoured, though we can comfortably taste it in this case. I shall come back for a little more say farther on. A Cleopatrician in her own right, she at once complicates the position while Burrus and Caseous are contending for her mystery by implicating herself with an elusive Antonius, a wop who would appear to hug a personal interest in refined cheese of all shades, at the same time as he wags an antomine art of being rude like the boor. This Antonius-Burrus-Caseous group triad may be said to equate the qualis equivalent with the older so-called talis on talis one, just as quantly as in the hyperchemical economantarchy the tantum ergons illuminate the quantum urge, so that eggs is to whey as whey is to zeed, like your golf child's a boob caddy. And this is why any simple Philadelphus of a fool you like to dress, an atomist-hued Lotonian, X-legged patricite, may be awfully green to one side of him and fruitfully blue on the other, which will not screen him, however, from appealing to my grope-searching eyes through the strongholds of my acropole as a boosted, blasted, bleating, blatant, bloating, blasphemous idiot who cannot tail a bomb from a pineapple when he steals one, and wannot sing his salmon with the Kong in aggregational pom-poms with the canting crew. No topsman to your tarpia. This thing, Mr. Abbey, is nefand, and taking off southstuffs and alka-like matters, I hope we can kill time to reach the salt, because there's some first-class nutric acids bittering in the salt pewter for you to plump your pottage in. The thundering legion has stormed Olymp that it end. 12 tabular times till now have I edicted it. Merus genius tucarius Caseous. Moriture te salutat. My famous themis race is run, so let democracy take the hindmost. Abraham Trippier. Those old diligences are quite out of date. Read next answer. I'll beat you so long. Big-tempered, why not take direct action? See previous reply. My unchanging word is sacred. The word is my wife, to expanse and expound, to vend and to venerate, and may the curlews crown our nuptials, till breath us depart. Amen. Beware would you change with my years. Be as young as your grandmother, the ring man in the wrong shop, but the right words by the rote order. Ubi lingua non cupacit, ibi fas, adversus hostem semper sac. She that will not feel my full moan, let her peal to thee as the hoyden and the impudent. That mon that hath no Moses in his soul, nor is not awed by conquests of words law, who never with himself was fed, and leaves his soil to lave his head, when his hopes and his high laws from whisking his woe, if he came to my preach, a proud purse-broken ranger, when the heavens were welling the spite of their spout, to beg for a bite in our bark, Noah's danger, would myself and Mac Jaffet, four in hand, foot him out? Aye, were he my own breast brother, my doubled with love, and my single biased hate, were we bred by the same fire, and signed with the same salt, had we tapped from the same master, and robbed the same till, were we tucked in the one bed, and bit by the one flea, homo gallant and hemicap noise, bum and dingo jack by churl, though it broke my heart to pray it, still I'd fear, I'd hate to say. 12. Sacer esto? Answer, semus sumus. Shem is as short for Seamus as Jem is jokey for Jacob. A few toughnecks are still get-atable, who pretend that aboriginally he was of respectable stemming. He was an outlex between the lines of Ragnar Blaubarb and Harold Hairwire, and an in-law to Captain the Honourable and Reverend Mr. Birdwood de Troblog was among his most distant connections. But every honest-to-goodness man in the land of the space of today knows that his back life will not stand being written about in black and white. Putting truth and untruth together, a shot may be made at what this hybrid actually was like to look at. Shem's bodily get-up, it seems, included an adze of a skull, an 8 of a lark's eye, the whole of a nose, 1 numb arm up a sleeve, 42 hairs off his uncrown, 18 to his mock lip, a trio of barbels from his megageg chin, sowman's son, the wrong shoulder higher than the right, all ears, an artificial tongue with a natural curl, not a foot to stand on, a handful of thumbs, a blind stomach, a deaf heart, a loose liver, 2/5 of 2 buttocks, 1 Gleatstein avoirdupois for him, a man root of all evil, a salmon kelt's thin skin, eel's blood in his cold toes, a bladder tryst-ended, so much so that young Master Shemmy, on his very first debouche at the very dawn of proto-history, seeing himself such and such, when playing with thistle words in their garden nursery, Grifo Trophio at Fig Street, 111, Shovelin, Old Holand, would we go back there now for sounds, pillings, and scents? Would we now for annas and annas? Would we for full score 8 and a liretta, for 12 blocks 1 bob, for 4 testers 1 groat? Not for a dinar, not for Joe. Dictated to all of his little brethren and sweesterines the first riddle of the universe, asking, when is a man not a man? Telling them, take their time, young fries, and wait till the tide stops, for from the first his day was a fortnight, and offering the prize of a bittersweet crab, a little present from the past, for their copper age was yet unminted, to the winner. One said, when the heavens are Quakers. A second said, when Bohemian lips. A third said, hold hard a jiffy, when he is a Gnostic and determined to. The next one said, when the angel of death kicks the bucket of life. Still another said, when the wine's at wit's ends. And still another, when lovely woman stoops to conk him. One of the litliest said, me, Sam, when Papa papered the harbour. One of the wittiest said, when he eat ye ablo cookin, and his mere himself those jukin. Still one said, when you are old, I'm grey, fall full wi' sleep. And still another, when we dead are walkner. And another, when he is just only after having been semi-sized. Another, when yea, he hath no bananas. And one, when those pigs, they begin now that they will flies up until the luft. All were wrong, so Shem himself, the dictator, took the cake, the correct solution being all give it up. When he is yours till the rending of the rocks, Shem. Shem was a sham, and a low sham, and his lowness creeped out first via foodstuffs. So low was he that he preferred Gibson's tea-time salmon, tinned, as inexpensive as pleasing, to the plumpest roe-heavy lax, or the friskiest par or smolt troutlet that ever was gaffed between Lake Slip and Island Bridge, and many was the time he repeated in his botulism that no jungle-grown pineapple ever smacked like the whoppers you shook out of Ananias's cans, find later in Gladstone's corner house, England. None of your inch-thick, blue-blooded balaclava fried at belief steaks, or juice-jelly legs of the Grex's molten mutton, or greasily gristly grunters goopans, or slice upon slab of luscious goose bosom, with lump after load of plum-pudding stuffing, all a swim in a swamp of bog-oak gravy for that Greek-and-hearted you'd. Roast beef of old Zealand, he could not touch it. See what happens when your somatophage merman takes his fancy to our vegetarian swan. He even ran away with himself, and became a Farsoonerite, saying he would far sooner muddle through the hash of lentils in Europe than meddle with Ireland's split little pea. Once, when among those rebels in a state of hopelessly helpless intoxication, the piscivore strove to lift a citroned peel to either nostril, hiccuping, apparently impromptued by the hibbat he had with his glottal stop, that he could flourish forever by the smell, as that cedron, like a cedar of the founts on mountains with Limanon of Lebanon. Oh, the lowness of him was beneath all up to that sunk to. No liked by like firewater, or first served first shot, or gullet-burn gin, or honest brewbarret beer either. Oh dear no. Instead, the tragic jester sobbed himself way-whingingly sick of life on some sort of a rhubarberous, maundering, yellow-green, funkel-blue, windy-gut, diodying applejack, squeezed from sour grapefruits. And to hear him twixt his sedimental cup-slips, when he had gulped down much too many gourds of it, retching off to almost as low withswillers, who always knew, notwithstanding, when they had had enough, and were rightly indignant at the wretch's hospitality, when they found to their horror they could not carry another drop. It came straight from the noble, white, fat Joe, open-wide sack, Joe, her why hide that, Joe, the wine vat of the most serene majesty, as archdiocese. If she is a duck, she's a duchess, and when she has a fair burst, not her fault, now is it? Art's touch-ups, funny you're grinning at, fancy you're in her yet, fanny you're in ya. Ain't that swell, hey? Piemengro, talk about lowness. Any dog's quantity of it visibly oozed out thickly from this dirty little blacking beetle. For the very fourth snap, the Tulloch Turnbull girl with a cold-blood Kodak shotted the as yet unremunerated national apostate, who was cowardly gun and camera shy, taking what he fondly thought was a short cut to car fare, so Amerigas, via the ship's steam Pridewind, after having buried a hatchet not so long before, by the wrong goods exeunt, number desh to tren into patata papaveries, fruiterers, and musical florists, with his chaho chavi, sarshin chilipen. She knew the vice out of Bridewell was a bad fast man by his walk on the spot. John's is a different butcher's. Next place you are uptown, pay him a visit, or better still, come to buy. You will enjoy cattlemen's spring meat. John's is now quite divorced from baking. Fattens, kills, flays, hangs, draws, quarters, and pieces. Feel his lambs, X. Feel how sheep, XX. His liver, too, is great value, a spatiality, XXX. Communicated. Around that time, moreover, one generally, for love of money, hoped, or at any rate, suspected among morticians that he would early turn out badly, develop hereditary pulmonary TB, and do for himself one dandy time, nay, of a pelting night, blanketed creditors, hearing a coarse song and splash off Eden Key, sighed and rolled over, sure all was up, but, though he fell heavily and locally into debit, not even then could such an antinomian be true to type. He would not put fire to his cerebrum. He would not throw himself in Liffey. He would not explode himself with pneumatics. He refused to suffocate himself with a sod. With the foreign devil's leave, the frayed-born fraud diddled even death. Ansi cabled, but shaking the worth out of his mouth, guarda costa leporello, Caseous Kreitz, from his Neo-Republican asylum to his Jonathan for a brother. Here, Tokay, gone to Murray, we're splooched, do something, fireless, and had answer, inconvenient, David. You see, chaps, it will trickle out. Freak silly, of course, but the Tom and the shorty of it is, he was in his bardic memory low. All the time he kept on treasuring with condign satisfaction each and every crumb of trek talk, covetous of his neighbour's word, and, if ever, during a munda conversazione, commoted in the nation's interest, delicate tippets were thrown out to him, touching his evil courses by some well-wishers, vainly pleading by scriptural arguments with the opprobrious papist about trying to brace up for the kiddos of the thing, scallywag, and be a men instead of a dem scrounger dish-it-all, such as, pray, what is the meaning, Sousie, of that continental expression, if you ever came across it? We think it is a word transpiciously like can I, or did you anywhere kennel in your gullible's travels, or during your rural troubadouring happen to stumble upon a certain gay young nobleman, whimpering to the name of low swine, who always addresses women out of the one corner of his mouth, lives on loans, and is furtive 3 years of age? Without one sigh of haste, like the supreme prig he was, and not a bit sorry, he would pull a vacant landlubber's face, root with earwaker's pensile in the outer of his lousher, and then, lisping the prattle-pate parnella to kill time, and swatting his dead best to think what under the canopies of Jansen's crest would any decent son of an Albio gentleman who had been to an university think? Let a lent hit a hint, and begin to tell all the intelligentsia admitted to that Tamilese Samtalese conclamazione, since still and before physicians, lawyers merchant, belfry politicians, agricolas manufraudurers, sacristains of the Pure River Society, philanthropics lodging on as many boards round the panesthetic at the same time as possible, the whole lifelong shrine story of his entire low Cornai existence, abusing his deceased ancestors wherever the sods were, and one moment tara-booming great blunderguns, about his far-famed fine Poppermore, Mr. Hum-Hum, whom history, climate, and entertainment made the first of his sept and always up to date, though Evans' ears how many fines he faces, and another moment vice and versas, croaking 3 jeers pa for his rotten little ghost of a peppy bag, Mr. Himmy Shimmy, a blighty, a reeky, a lighty, a scrapey, a babbly, a ninny, dirty 7th among thieves, and always bottom sawyer, till no one knowed how homely home could be, giving unsolicited testimony on behalf of the absent, as glib as Eve's water to those present, who, meanwhile, with increasing lack of interest in his semantics, allowed various subconscious smickers to drivel slowly across their features, unconsciously explaining, for instance, with a meticulosity bordering on the insane, the various meanings of all the different foreign parts of speech he misused, and cuttle-fishing every lie unshrinkable about all the other people in the story, leaving out, of course, foreconsciously, the simple warp and plague and poison they had cornered him about, until there was not a snoozer among them, but was utterly undeceived in the heel of the reel by the recital of the rigmarole. He went without saying that the cull disliked anything anyway approaching a plain, straightforward, stand-up or knock-down row, and as often as he was called in to umpire any octagonal argument among slang-whangers, the accomplished washout always used to rub shoulders with the last speaker and clasp shakers, the hand touch which is speech without words, and agree to every word, as soon as half uttered. Command me, your servant good, I revere you. How, my seer, be drinking that? Quite truth, gracious, I'm used. See what I'm hearing, all so good. Please it, me sure be filling this, quite so. You said it a passafellow. Muchas gracias. Is there firing on me? Is there Gerdic on you? To your good self, your sulphur. And then at once focus his whole unbalanced attention upon the next octagonist who managed to catch a listener's eye, asking and imploring him out of his piteous one-winker, he mopped his diadumenos, whether there was anything in the world he could do to please him and to overflow his tumble tantalizer for him yet once more. One hail cannon night, for his departure was attended by a heavy downpour, as very recently as some 1,000 rains ago, he was therefore treated with what closely resembled personal violence, being sockered all unsuspectingly through the deserted village of Tumblin-on-the-Leafy from Mr. Van Homry's house at 81 bis Mabbott's Mall as far as Green Patch beyond the brickfields of Salmonpool by rival teams of slow spires counter-quicklimers who finally, as rarely they had been detained out rather lateish, thought, business hits business, they had better be streaking for home after their Auburn to Auburn, with thanks for the pleasant evening, one and all disgustedly, instead of ruggering him back and awake, reconciled, though they were as jealous as could be cullions about all the truffles they had brought on him, to a friendship fast and furious, which merely arose out of the noxious pervert's perfect lowness. Again, there was a hope that people, looking on him with the contempt of the contemplables, after first giving him a roll in the dirt, might pity and forgive him, if properly deloused, but the pleb was born a quicklow, and sank a lowing till he stank out of sight. All saints beat Belial. Mickle goals to nickel. Not possible. Already? In nowhere has yet the whole world taken part of himself for his wife. By nowhere have poor parents been sentenced to worms, blood and thunder for life. Not yet has the Emperor Corpsica forced the earth out of Angleterre. Not yet have the Saxon and Judder on the mound of a word made war. Not yet witchy Withy of Wench struck fire of his heath from on Hoth. Not yet has Arco-Belaine forspoken peace upon oath. Cleft foot from Hempel must tumble, blameful gardeners bound to fall. Broken eggs will perceive but napples, for where there's his will, there's his wall. But the mount still frowns on the mill stream, while their Madsons leap his bier, and her rilstrill lifts to his mercosty, all her daft daughters laugh in her ear, till the four shores of deaf Tory Island let the dews dumb earwigs rail. Herp, herp, for their misunderstandings, chirps the ballad of Perse or Rail. O fortunas casualitas! Lefty takes the cherub cake, while Rights clothes his hoof. Darkies never done tug that coon out to play non-excretory, anti-sexuous, misoxanetic, gazy, pure, flesh and blood games, written and composed and sung and danced by Neshamus Naaman, same as pickaninnies play all day, those old none of your honeys and rubers games for fun and element we used to play with Dinah and old Joe kicking her behind and before, and the yellow girl kicking him behind old Joe, games like Tom Tom the Thunderman, put the wind up the peeler, hat in the ring, priss on your Pritchards and play with her steam. Mickle on the lucky pig, nickel in the slot, Sheila Harnett and her cow, Adam and Elle, Humble Bumble, Moggies on the wall, 2s and 3s, American jump, fox come out of your den, broken bottles, writing a letter to Punch, tip-top is a sweet store, Henry Crump expolled. Postman's knock, are we fairly's represented? Solomon's silent reading, apple tree barestone, I know a washerwoman. Hospitals, as I was walking. There is only one's house in Dream Collar. Battle of Waterloo. Colours? Eggs in the bush, haberdasherisha, telling your dreams, what's the time, nap, ducking mammy, last man standing, Healy Baboon and the Forky Thiegs, fickle eyes and futile ears, hand married but once in my life and I'll never commit such a sin again. Zip Cooney candy, turkey in the straw, this is the way we sow the seed of a long and lusty morning. Hops of fun at Finnegans Wake, I seen the toothbrush with Pat Farrell, here's the fat to graze the priest's boots, when his steam was like a Rembrandt round McGarvey. Now, it is notoriously known how on that surprisingly bludgeony Unity Sunday, when the grand Jermagall All-Star bout was harrily the rage between our Welting Toms Extraordinary and our Pettythicks the Marshalese, and Irish eyes of welcome were smiling daggers down their backs, when the Roth, Vice and Blouse met the Noyer Blank and Rogues, and the grim White and Cold bet the Black Fighting Tans, categorically unimperative by the Maxims, a rank funk getting the better of him. The Scot, in a bad fit of pyjamas, fled like a leveret for his bare lives to Talviland, Ahon, Ahaza, pursued by the scented curses of all the village bells, and without having struck one blow, Pig stole on him was lusty lagging. It was because Dusty shook. Cusky corked himself up tight in his ink battle house, badly the worse for booze gas, there to stay in a far for the life, where, as there was not a moment to be lost, after he had boxed around with his forte piano till he was hauled back bamp and bump him blues, he collapsed carefully under a bed tick from Schwitzer's, his face enveloped into a dead warrior's telemaque, with a lullabaw's sunbonnet and a water wattle at his feet to stoke his energy of waiting, moaning feebly in Monk Marian monotheme, but turned long, and then a nation louder, while engaged in swallowing from a large ampuller, that his Padraig's purgatory was more than a nigger bloke could bear, hemi-paralysed by the tongue warfare and all the schmozzle. Daily Maily full of place, holy Maily motherlop joss, his cheeks and trousers changing colour every time a gat croaked. How is that for low laities and gentle nuns? Why, dog of the Crostigans, whole continents rang with this Cairo Coran lowness. Sheols of houris in Shems upon divans, revolted Stella's Vespertine ves among them, at a bare, mention of the scaly ribald, exclaimed, Poisse! But would anyone, short of a madhouse, believe it? Neither of those clean little cherubim, Nero or no book is an Esther himself, ever nursed such a spoiled opinion of his monstrous marvellosity as did this mental and moral defective, here perhaps at the vanescence of his low nest, who was known to grunt rather than gunard upon one occasion, while drinking heavily of spirits to that interlocutor, a latere, and private privy secretary he used to pal around with in the Cabby House, one Davy Brown Nolan, his heaven-laid twin. This ham-boned dog poet pseudoed himself under the hang name he gave himself of Beth Gillard. In the porchway of a gypsy's bar, Shem always blaspheming, so holy writ, Billy, he would try, old belly, and pay this one man-jack congregant of his 4 soups every lass of next month volley, so sure as there's a tail on a comet, as a taste for Storic's 42th, that is to stay, to listen out, only 20 minutes more, bully, his ballade imaginaire, which was to be dubbed Wine, Woman and Water Clocks, or How a Guy Finks and Forks When He Is Going Batty, by Maester James de la Plume, some most dreadful stuff in a murderous mirror hand, that he was aware of no other shag's pick, other shack his beard, either prexactly unlike his polar and this is his, or precisely the same as as what he fancied, or guessed the sames as he was himself, and that great scoot duckings and thuggery, though he was fox to fox, like a bunny boy Roger, with all the tea-shop lionses of Lumdrum hive and hosed up against him, being a lapsus linguo, with a ruvy-dub shorter temper, bad cad dad fad sad mad nad van hattie bear, the consequentials of casuality, pre-pested crosswords in post position, scruff, scruffer, scrufferum morimost, and all that sort of thing. If ream stood to reason, and his lanka-live line lasted, he would wipeally English spooker, multophoniaxically spooking, off the face of the earth. After the thorough fright he got that bloody Swithin's day, though every doorpost in much-tried Luca-Lizard was smeared with generous erstborn gore, and every free-for-all cobbleway slippery with the bloods of heroes, crying to welkins for others, and Noahs and culverts agush with tears of joy, our low-waster never had the common bar-lamb's pluck to stir out and about the compound, while everyone else of the torchlit throng, slashers and sliced alike, mob one massa, waded and baded around, yamp yam pamp yam, chanting the Galuli chorus from the monster book of patriotic poetry, O pura e pia bella, in junket sampam, or in secular sincularum, heads up, on his bona fide avocation, the little folk creeping on all fours to their natural school treat, but childishly gleeful when a stray whizzer sang out intermediately. And happy belongers to the fairer sex on their usual quest for higher things, but vying with Lady Smythe to avenge MacJobber, went stone-stepping with their bicker-staffs on educated feet, blinkety-plonk, across the seven-span Ponte dei Colori, set up over the slop after the war-to-end war by Messrs, a charitable government, for the only once dia dos finados. He did take a Tom Pip Pipistrella through a 3-draw 18 Hawks power Durdicke telescope, luminous to larboard, only like the lamps in Nassau Strasse, out of his westernmost keyhole, spitting at the impenetrablum wetter, and it was porco ghastly, that autumn, with an each-way hope in his shivering soul as he prayed to the cloud incertitude of finding out for himself on account of all the cools in Croker Parker, or owing to all the codsyogs in Calatavala, where the true conciliation was forging ahead or falling back after the celestious intemperance, and, for devil's sake, why, with his see me see, and his my see a corves, and his froca fosca fosker, layin loves in meing seeing, he got the charm of his optical life when he found himself, hic sunt lenones, at point-blank range, blinking down the barrel of an irregular revolver of the bulldog with a purpose pattern, handled by an unknown quarreller who supposedly had been told off to shade and shoot shy Shem, should the shit show his shiny snout out a while to look facts in their face before being hosed and creased, up rip and jack him, by 6 or a dozen of the gay boys. What? Parasampram, in the names of Deucalion and Pyrrha, and the incensed privy and the licensed pantry gods, and Stater and Victor and Cotton Run, and the whole Mesa Redonda of Lorenzo Tulas in Convocation, was this disinterestingly low human type, this calumnious column of cloaxity, this Bengalese beacon of biloxity, this Annamite aper of atrocity really at, it will be precise to clarify, for he seems in a bad case. The answer, to do all the ditties in one dedo, would sound, from pulling himself on his most flavoured canal, the huge chest house of his elders, the Popa Preta and some Navico navvies, he had flickered up and flinnered down into a drug and drunkery addict, growing megalomane of a loose past. This explains the litany of septuntial letter trumpets, honorific, high-pitched, erudite, neoclassical, which he so loved as patricianly to manuscribe after his name. It would have diverted, if ever seen, the shuddersome spectacle of this semi-demented zany amid the inspissated grime of his glaucous den, making believe to read his uselessly unreadable blue book of Eccles, Edition de Ténèbres, even yet sighs the most different Dr. Poinderjenk, authorized Bowdler and censor, it can't be repeated, turning over 3 sheets at a wind, telling himself delightedly, no espellor more so, that every splurge on the vellum he blundered over was an ailing vision more gorgeous than the one before, Tits, a rose-shell cottage by the sea for nothing forever, a lady's try-on hosiery rattle at liberty, a sewerful of guinea gold wine, with branco mange padano pie, and 6-cylinder oysters worth £1 a bite, an entire opera house. There was to be stamping room only in the prompter's box, and ever the more his quick kept swelling, of enthusiastic noblewomen flinging every coronet crimson stitch they had off at his proscenium, one after the others, inamagodded into a just loosing themselves in their gaiety pantomime, when he gads her, according to all accounts trick. He squealed the top squall in deal lil Shem lock-up yellin'. Gee whiz, do you hear that far? So pure, lout gout of sabots. Juice like a boyd, for fully 5 minutes, infinitely better than Baraton McGluckin, with a scrumptious cocked hat, and 3 green cheese and tangerine Trinity plumes on the right-handle side of his amarellus head, a coat McFarlane, the cursest cut, you understand, a Spaniard's digger at his ribs, Alfayate punxit, an hazel blue blow sheet for his blouse bosom blossom, and a Dean's crozier that he won from Cardinal Lindonderry, and Cardinal Carchingarry, and Cardinal Laurie O'Toole, and Cardinal Occidentaccia, aho, in the Derby doubled for falling first over the hurdles, madam, in the other hand, AATSOT, but what with the murky light, the botchy print, the tattered cover, the jig-jagged page, the fumbling fingers, the fox-trotting fleas, the lie-a-bed lice, the scum on his tongue, the drop in his eye, the lump in his throat, the drink in his pottle, the itch in his palm, the wail of his wind, the grief from his breath, the fog of his mind-fag, the buzz in his brain-tree, the tick of his conscience, the height of his rage, the gush down his fundament, the fire in his gorge, the tickle of his tail, the bane in his bullocks, the squints in his soul, the rot in his eater, the echo in his ear, the totters of his toes, the tetters on his tumty-tum, the rats in his garret, the bats in his belfry, the budgerigars and bamboozle and bowbirds, the hullabaloo and the dust in his ears. Since it took him a month to steal a march, he was hard set to mummerize more than a word a week. Hakes haulin', hooks fisk, can you beat it? Whoa! I say, can you bait it? Was there ever heard of such low-down blackguardism? Positively, it woolies one to think over it. Yet the bumper sprinkler used to boast aloud alone to himself, with a accent on it, when mine father was a Boer constructor, and I was a lexical student, parole, and corrected with the blackboard, trying to copy the stage Englishman he brought their house down on, shouting, "Bravour, Sir Charles, letter perfect, colossal low swaller speech." How he had been towed out of all the shicker families of the Klondikers, from Pew Reich, Swab's Pays, the land of Nod, Shrugger's country, Pension Danubier home, and Barbaropolis, who had settled and stratified in the capital city after its hebdomadary metropoliacialization as sun-blistered, moon-plastered, gory, wheedling, jovial, lecherous, and full, ordered off the gorgeous premises in most cases on account of his smell, which all cookmaids eminently objected to, as resembling the abominable puzzo that welled out of the pozzo. Instead of tutoring those model households plain wholesome pothooks, a thing he never possessed of his Nigerian own, what do you think Vulgariano did but study with stolen fruit how cutely to copy all their various styles of signature, so as one day to utter an epical forged check on the public for his own private profit, until, as just related, the Dustbin's United Scullery Maids and Househelp Sorority, better known as Sluttery's Melted Fut, turned him down, and assisted nature by unitedly shooing the source of annoyance out of the place altogether, and totally on the heat of the moment, holding one another's gonk, for no one, hound or scrub lady, not even the Turk, ungreekable in percent of the Armenable, dared whiff the polecat at close range, and making some point-to-pointing remarks, as they done so, at the perfects of the sniffy, your honour, a boon the lyo why a stunk, mister. James wishes to hear from wearers of abandoned female costumes, gratefully received wadmel jumper, rather full pair of culottes and undergarmentaries, to start city life together. His James is out of job, would sit and write. He has lately committed one of the then commandments, but she will now assist. superior built, domestic, regular layer, also got the boot. He appreciates it. Copies abortisement. One cannot even begin to post-figure out a statuesque quo ante as to how slow in reality the excommunicated drumchondriac Nate Hamis really was. Who can say how many pseudo-stylic shamiana, how few or how many of the most venerated public impostures, how very many piously forged palimpsests slipped in the first place by this morbid process from his Pelagiarist pen? Be that as it may, but for that light fantastic of his nose's glow as it slid lucifericiously within an inch of its page, he would touch at it from time to other, the red eye of his fear and saddishness, to ensign the colours by the beerlets in his mathness, and his educandees to outhew to themselves in the cries of gurgly, jember inkware, chanchambre, sincero, zinzabar, tincture, and gin. Nibs never would have quilled a serif to sheepskin. By that rosy lampoon's effluvious burning, and with help of the simulchronic flush in his pan, a guinea a girk he gets there. He scrabbled and scratched and scrobbled and screvened nameless shamelessness about everybody he ever met, even sharing a precipitation under the idlish terrier's umbrella of a shower-proof wall, while all over up and down the four margins of this rancid Shem stuff, the evil smeller, who was devoted to old Father Sardanapalus, used to stipple endlessly inartistic portraits of himself in the act of reciting old Nichiabelli's monologue into your ear, anno o non anno agel problemas, ser autore, QED, a heartbreakingly handsome young Paolo with love lyrics for the goyles in his ales, a plaintiff's tenor voice, a ducal income of 132 drachmas per yard from Broken Hill's stranded estate, Cambridge Mannings, cutting a great dash in a brand-new 2-guinea dress suit, and a burled Hogsford hired for a first-day evening merry party, and a lovely long pair of inky Italian moustaches, glistering with boric Vaseline and frangipani. Puh! How unwhisperably so. The house, O'Shea or O'Shame, qui va pieno, known as the Haunted Ink Bottle, no number, Brimstone Walk, Asia in Ireland, as it was infested with rats, with his pen name Shut, sepia scraped on the doorplate, and a blind of black sailcloth over its one whinshog, in which the sole contracted son of the secret cell groped through life at the expense of the taxpayers, dejected into day and night with Jesuit bark and bitter bite, calico hydrants of Zolfor and Scopolamina by full and 40 quisisanos, every day in everyone's way, more exceeding in violent abuse of self and others, was the worst, it is hoped, even in our western playboyish world, for pure mouse-farm filth. You brag of your brass castle, or your tiled house in Ballyfermont. Nigs, nigs, and nigs again. For this was a stinksome inkin-stink, quite Potsoner to the rottle. Smatter-of-fact, Angles afternoon browsing there, thought not Adam reeked more rare. My word! The warped flooring of the lair, and sound-conducting walls thereof, to say nothing of the uprights and imposts, were Persianly literatured with burst love letters, telltale stories, sticky-back snaps, doubtful eggshells, vouchers, flints, borers, puffers, amygdaloid almonds, rindless raisins, alphabetiformed verbiage, biblical viases, impeta dictas, visus umbique, a hems and a has, ineffable tries at speech unasyllabled. You o me's, I old hymns, flew-foul smut, fallen lucifers, vestas which had served, showered ornaments, borrowed brogues, reversible jackets, black-eye lenses, family jars, false hair shirts, God-forsaken scapulars, never-worn breeches, cutthroat ties, counterfeit francs, best intentions, curried notes, upset Latin tin tacks, unused mill and stumpling stones, twisted quills, painful digests, magnifying wine-glasses, solid objects cast at goblins, once-current puns, quashed potatoes, messes of mottage, unquestionable issue papers, seedy ejaculations, limerick dams, crocodile tears, spilt ink, blasphematory spits, stale chestnuts, schoolgirls, young ladies, milkmaids, washerwomen, shopkeepers' wives, merry widows, ex-nuns, vice-abbesses, pro-virgins, super-whores, silent sisters, Charlie's aunts, grandmothers, mothers-in-law, foster-mothers, godmothers, garters, tress clippings from right, lift, and syndrome, worms of snot, toothsome pickings, cans of Swiss condensed bilk, highbrow lotions, kisses from the antipodes, presents from pickpockets, borrowed plumes, relaxable hand grips, princess promises, lees of wine, deoxidized carbons, convertible collars, divilluca doffers, broken wafers, unloosed shoe latchets, crooked straight waistcoats, fresh horrors from Hades, globules of mercury, undeleted gleet, glass eyes for an eye, gloss teeth for a tooth, war moans, special sighs, long sufferings of long standing, ahs, ohs, wees, sees, yas, yos, jas, nays, thaws, so's, yeses and yeses and yeses, to which, if one has the stomach to add, the breakages, upheavals, distortions, inversions of all this chambermaid music, one stands, given a grain of goodwill, a fair chance of actually seeing the whirling dervish, tumult, son of thunder, self-exiled in upon his ego, a night long a shaking betwixt tween white or redder horrors, noonday terrorized to skin and bone by an ineluctable phantom, may the Shaper have mercy on him, writing the mystery of himself in furniture. Of course, our low hero was a self-valeter by choice of need, so up he got up whatever is meant by a Stourbridge clay kitchenette and Lithargo Galenu fowl house for the sake of aches. The umple does not fall very far from the dumper tree, which the more melodious jigsmith, in defiance of the uncontrollable birth preservativation Game and Poultry Act, playing lallery rook cookery nook by the dodginess of his lantern, brewed and cocked and potched in an athanor, whites and yolks and yilks and whoats, to the frolling fredonance of Mas Blanca que la Blanca Hermana and Amarilla muy bien, with cinnamon and locusts and wild beeswax and licorice and carrageen moss and blaster of berries and Astor's mess and Huster's mixture and Yellow Nan's embrocation and Pinkington's patty and stardust and sinner's tears, accurant to Sheridan's art of panning, chanting for all regale to the like of the lags he left behind, with Litty van Letty van Leven, his cantraps of fermented words, abracadabra calubra calorum, his oaths à la Madame Gabrielle de l'Église, his avs à la Mistress B. de B. Meinfeld, his ayas usquad mala à la pomme de ciel, his woves, oves, and oves à la sulfate de soude, his occhiuri sauté salmoné à la Monseigneur, his soufflosion of oves with some cat on toyast à la mer poivre, his porgadovis à la fenella, his fried eggs à la tricarème, in what was meant for a closet. Ah ho, if only he had listened better to the four masters that infanted him, Father Matthew, and Le Père Noble, and Pastor Lucas, and Padre Aguilar, not forgetting lay teacher Baldwin. Ah ho. His costive Satan's antimonian manganese litmo-litmius nature never needed such an alcove so when Robber and Munsell, the pulpic dictators, on the nudgement of their legal advisers, Messrs. Codex and Podex, and under his own benefiction of their pastor, Father Flammius Falconer, boycotted him of all mutton suet candles and Rome Rule stationery for any purpose. He winged away on a wild goose chase across the cathartic ocean and made synthetic ink and sensitive paper for his own end out of his wit's waste. You ask, in Sam Hill, how? Let manner and matter of this, for these our sporting times, be cloaked up in the language of blush-fed pauperates, that an Anglican ordinal, not reading his own rude Dunsky-tonguer, may ever behold the brand of scarlet on the brow of her of Babylon, and feel not the pink one in his own damned cheek. Primum opifex altus prosator, ad terram viviparam, et cuncti potentem, sine ullo pudore nec venia, suscepto pluviali atque distinctis perisomatis, natibus nudis uti nati puissent, sese ad propinquams, flens et gemens, in manum suam evacuavit, highly prosy, crap in his hand, sorry. Postea, animale nigro exoneratus, classicum pulsans, stercus proprium, quad appellavit, deiectiones suas, in vas olim honorabile tristitie posuit, eodem sub invocatione fratrorum geminorum medardi et godardi lete ac melliflue minxit, salmum qui incipit, lingua mea calamus scribe velocitas scribentis, magna voce cantitans, didapis, says he was dejected, asks to be exonerated, demo me extercore turpi cum divi orionis jucunditate mixto, cocto, frigorique exposito, encaustum sibi fecit indelibile. Fecto Ryans, the indelible ink. Then Pius Aeneas, conformant to the fulminant firman which enjoins on the tremulos terian, that when the call comes he shall produce nichthymerically from his unheavenly body a no uncertain quantity of obscene matter not protected by copyright in the united stars of Aurania, or bedeed and bedewed and bedang and bedung to him with this double dye brought to blood heat gallic acid on iron ore through the bowels of his misery, flashly, faithfully, nastily, appropriately, this Aesoan Menshevik, and the first till last alchemist, wrote over every square inch of the only fool's cap available, his own body, till by its corrosive sublimation one continuous present tense integument slowly unfolded all merry-voicing, mood-moulded, cycle-wheeling history, thereby, he said, reflecting from his own individual person life unlivable, trans-accidentated through the slow fires of consciousness into a individual chaos, perilous, potent, common to all flesh, human only, mortal, but with each word that would not pass away, the squid self, which he had squirt-screened from the crystalline world, wane chagrin old and Dorian greyer in its dudhood. This exists that is its after having been said, we know, and dabble take dabnal, and the dal dabble dab aldanabal. So perhaps aglag agglomeratively as a spanking. After all, and arclast for arclist on his last public misappearance, circling the square for the death fate of St. Ignatius Poison Ivy of the fickle crowd, upon the 6th day of Hog Sober, kill him our king, lay him low, and brandishing his bell-bearing stylo, the shining key-man of the wiles of change, if what is sauce for the zazzy is sauce for the zazzimas, the blonde cop who thought it was ink was out of his depth, but bright in the main. Petty Constable Sisterson of the Chris Kroncrawl, it was, the parochial watch, Big the dog, the dig the bog, the bag of the dog of the begadug degabug, who had been detailed from pollute stoties to save him, this the quem, that the quum, from the ligature libelous effects of foul clay in little clots, and mob mauling on looks, that wrong counter the tenderfoot and eveling near the livings means unium getherum, knock Marie, compti me, reeling more to the right than he lurched to the left. On his way from a proto-prostitute, he would always have a little pigeoness somewhere, with his arch-girl Arco-Iris smock name of Mergit, just as he was butting in round the corner of bad times, under a hideful between the rival doors of warm Bethels of worship through his bordel house fongster, greeting for gracious auras as usual, where ladies have they that a dog mean sort herring? Surge, oh search me, the incapable reparteed, with a self-evident subtlety, so obviously spurious, and raising his hair after the grace, with the Christmas under his clutch-arm, for portsy masser and pertsy messes and pertsy miss and partsy masters, like a prance of findingos, with a shill-to, shall-to, slipney, stripney, in he skittled. Swikey. The all-white poor's guardian, palpably of Baltossic stomach, was literally astonished over the painful sake, how he burst to self, which he was gone to, where he intent to did he, whether you think will, wherein the whole current of the afternoon, what's the souch of a search hads of hits of hymns, urged and staggered thereto in his country ports, at the Caledosian capacity for lutevisky of the captain's wineskin, and even more so during, looking his bigmost astonishments, it was said him, ashoo, fund the concerned outgift of the dead med dirt, how that Arabigibus, conspuent to the Dominical order, and ex-king noblish permish, he was namely coon at bringer at home 2 gallants as per royal, full poultry till his murder. Nip up and nab it. Poltergeist cots donder hoploits. Kick? What mother? Whose porter? Which pair? Why namely coon? But our undiligence has been Pluto tested, so enough of such porter black lowness. Too base for printing. Perpending that Potterico Purcell pulls the cold stone out of winter waters, and Silder seas sing for herring our king, sept oct nov des John Phibbs march. We cannot in mercy or justice, nor on the lovum for labyrinthos, stay here for the residence of our existings, discussing Tamster ham of 10 man's thirst. Justius, to him other. Brawn is my name, and broad is my nature, and I've bright on my brow, and all's right with every feature, and I'll broon this bird or brown Bess's bungs gone bandy. I'm the boy to bruise and braze. Bouse. Stand forth, nay man of no land, for no longer will I follow you oblique-like through the inspired form of the third-person singular and the moods and hesitancies of the deponent, but address myself to you with the imperative of my vendicative, provocative, and out direct. Stand forth, come boldly, jolly me, move me, swilling though I am to laughter in your true colours, ere you be back forever till I give you your talking to. Shem McAdamson, you know me and I know you, and all your shemeries. Where have you been in the uterum, enjoying yourself all the morning since your last wet bed confession? I advise you to conceal yourself, my little friend, as I have said a moment ago, and put your hands in my hands, and have a night's long, homely little confiteor about things. Let me see. It is looking pretty black against you, we suggest, Shem of Vic. You will need all the elements in the river to clean you over it all, and a 40 fine Pope's priest power bull of a tender to boot. Let us pry. We thought, would, and did. Cur, quicquid, ubi, quando, quomodo, quoties, quibus auxilius. You are bred, fed, fostered, and fattened from holy childhood up in this two-Easter island, on the pie jaw of hilarious heaven, and roaring the other place. Plunders tonight of you, blunders what's left of you, flash as flash can, and now, forsooth, a nogger among the blankards of this dastard century, you have become of twosome twy-minds, fornenced gods, hidden and discovered, nay, condemned fool, anarch, egoarch, heresiarch, you have reared your disunited kingdom on the vacuum of your own most intensely doubtful soul. Do you hold yourself, then, for some god in the manger, Shehohem, that you will neither serve nor let serve, pray nor let pray? And here pay the piety, must I to nerve myself to pray for the loss of self-respect, to equip me for the horrible necessity of scandalizing? My dear sisters, are you ready? By sloughing off my hope and tremors while we all swim together in the pool of Sodom? I shall shiver for my purity, while they will weep big for your sins. Away with covered words, new Solomonites, for old bad sheep baths. That inharmonious detail, did you name it? Cold Caldor? Gee! Victory? Now opprobro of underslung pipes. John Jacobs, while yet an adolescent, what do I say? While still puerile in your tub suit with button legs, you got a handsome present of a self-raising syringe and twin feeders. You know, Monsieur Abgot, in your art of arts, to your cost as well as I do, and don't try to hide it, the penal lots I am now poking at. And the wheeze sort of was you should, if you were as bold a stroke now as the curate that christened you. Sonny, doth the candle, repopulate the land of your birth, and count up your progeny by the hungered head and the angered thousand. But you thwarted the wise pish of your co-god-parents, soft, among countless occasions of failing, for, said you, I will elencate, adding to the malice of your transgression, yes, and changing its nature. You see, I have read your theology for you, alternating the morosity of my delectations, a filtered love, trysting by tantrums, small peace in pen marks, with sensibility, sponsibility, passibility, and prostability, your Lubbock's other fear pleasures of a butler's life, even extruding your strabismal apologia when legibly depressed upon defenceless paper, and thereby adding to the already unhappiness of this our pop-eyed world scribblative. All that, too, with cantrids of countless catchalines, the manish as many as the miniful, congested around and about you for acres and roods and poles or perches, thick as the fluctuant sands of Chalwador, accomplished women, indeed fully educated, far from being old and rich behind their dream of arrivism, if they have only their honour left, and not deterred by bad weather when consumed by amorous passion, struggling to possess themselves of your bouche, one son of Zorga, for all daughters of anguish, solus cum sola sive cuncties cum omnibobs, I'd have been the best man for you, myself, mutely eyeing for that natural knot, debituary vases or vessels preposterous, for what would not have cost you 10 bolivars of collar work, or the price of one ping-pang, just a lilt, let us trilt, of the oldest song in the wooed wood world, 2 we to 1, accompanied by a plain gold band. Hail, hail, high bosom-heaving mistress mourner of the all-sweetheartening bride-immure demeanour, her eyes so gladsome, we'll all take shares in the groom. Sniffer of carrion, premature grave-digger, seeker of the nest of evil in the bosom of a good word, you who sleep at our vigil and fast for our feast, you with your dislocated reason have cutely foretold a Japhet in your own absence by blind poring upon your many scalds and burns and blisters, impetiginous sore and pustules, by the auspices of that raven cloud, your shade, and by the auguries of rooks in Parliament, death with every disaster, the dynamitization of colleagues, the reducing of records to ashes, the levelling of all customs by blazes, the return of a lot of sweet-tempered gunpowder didst into dudst, but it never struck your mudhead's obtundity. Oh, hell, here comes our funeral. Oh, pest, I'll miss the post. That the more carrots you chop, the more turnips you slit, the more Murphys you peel, the more onions you cry over, the more bull beef you butch, the more mutton you crack a hack, the more pot herbs you pound, the fiercer the fire, and the longer your spoon, and the harder your gruel with more grease to your elbow, the merrier fumes your new Irish stew. Oh, by the way, yes, another thing occurs to me. You, let me tell you with the utmost politeness, were very ordinarily designed. Your birth-wrong was to fall in with plan, as our nationals should, as all nationists must, and do a certain office, what I will not tell you, in a certain holy office, nor will I say where, during certain agonizing office hours, a clerical party all to yourself, from such a year to such an hour, on such and such a date, at so and so much a week, pro anno. Guinnesses, may I remind, were just a gulp for you, failing in which you might have taken the scales off boilers like any Boscop of Yorick, and do your little threepenny bit, and thus earn from the nation true thanks, right here in our place of burden, your bourne of travail and ville of tares, where, after a divine's prodigence, you drew the first water gasp in your life, from the crib where you once was bit to the crypt you'll be twice as shy of, same as we, long of us, alone with the colt in the corner, where you were as popular as an Armenian with the faithful. And you set fire to my tailcoat when I hold the paraffin smoker under yours. I hope that chimney's clear. But, slackly shirking both your bullet and your billet, you beat it backwards, like Boulanger from Galway, but he combed the grass against his stride, to sing us a song of alibi, the cohon call over the grey-bounding, slow-rolling, amply heaving metamorphosius that oozy rocks parapangle their preposters with. Nomad, Mona by lamplight, Antinos, shemming amid everyone's repressed laughter, to conceal your scatchophily by mating, like a thorough-paced prosodite, masculine monosyllables of the same numerical muse, an Irish emigrant the wrong way out, sitting on your crooked sixpenny stile, an unfrill-frocked quack-friar, will you, for the laugh of Shakespeare, just help mine with the epithet, semi-Semitic serendipitist, thanks, I think that describes you, Europasianized affer-yank. Shall we follow each other's a step longer, drowner of daggers, whiles our liege, till yet a stranger in the front yard of his happiness, is taking, heel helper, one gob, one gap, one gulp, and gorger of all, his refreshment? There grew up beside you, amid our orisons of the speediest in Novena Lodge, Novara Avenue in Patripodium and Bummel, oaf, out of work, one removed from an unwashed savage, on his keeping and in yours. I pose you know why Possum hides is 'cause he hain't the no-gum presumption. That other, Immaculatus, from head to foot, sir, that pure one, all truths of other times, he who was well known in Celestine circles before he sped aloft, our handsome young spiritual physician that was to be, seducing every sense to self-willing celibacy, the most winning counterfeit on our income share lot tree, a chum of the angels, a youth those reporters so petitily wanted as game fellow that they asked his mother for ittle earps bropper to let him tum to tinder tart and peas and bring his scoot along and tend they were all real brothers in the big just right home where Dodd lives, just to teddify the life out of him and pat and pass him one with other like musk from hand to hand, that mother-smothered model, that good looker with not a flaw, whose spiritual toilettes were the talk of half the town, for sunset wear and nightfall and use, and daybroken donning and noonchen showing, and the very thing for tea's time. But him you laid low with one hand one fine May morning in the middle of your might, your bosom foe, because he mussed your speller on you, or because he cut a pretty figure in the focus of your frontispects. Not one did you slay, no, but a continent, to find out how his innards worked. Ever read of that great-grand landfather of our vision-builders, Babu, the bourgeois meister, who thought to touch both himmels at the punt of his risen stiff staff, and how wishy-washy sank the waters of his thought? Ever thought of that hereticalist Marcon and the two sissy maidies, and how bulkily he shat the Ruction's gunneral? Ever hear of that Foxy, that Lupo and that Muncax, and the virgin air of the Morrisons, blethering ape? Malingerer in luxury, collector general, what has your lowness done in the mealtime with all the hamilk cars of cooked vegetables, the hatfuls of stewed fruit, the suitcases of coddled ales, the parish funds, me shamer man, that you kitty coaxed so flexibly out of the charitable butteries by yowling heavy with a hollow voice drop of your horrible, awful poverty of mind, so as you couldn't even pledge a crown of thorns to pawn a coat off Trevis, and as how you was bad no end, so you was, so whelp you sinner Peter and sinner Pool, with the chicken's gape and pas mal de siècle, which, by the by, Reynaldo, is the ordinary emetic French for grenadiers, drip. To let you have your plank and your bone wash, all the has troubles you lost, to give you your pound of platinum and 1,000 thongs a year. Oh, you were excruciated, in honour bound to the cross of your own cruel fiction, to let you have your Sarday's spree and holy night's sleep. Fame would come to you twixt asleep and awake, and leave to lie till Paraskevy and the cock crows for Denmark. Oh, Jonathan, your estomach! The simian has no sentiment secretions, but weep cataracts for all me, pain the shaman. Oft in the smelly night will they wallow for a clutch of the famished hand, I say, them bearded Jezebels you hired to rob you, while on your sodden straw impolitely you encored, airish and no boggalish, those horn-made ivory dreams you raved of the Ruth you called your companionette, a beauty from the Bible, of the flush pots of Euston, and the hanging garments of Marylebone. But the dormer moon she smiles Selene, and the light-throwers nickered, who's whinging we? Comport yourself, you inconsistency. Where is that little alimony nest egg against our predictable rainy day? Is it not the fact, gainsay me, cake-eater, that while whistle-whirling your crazy elegies around Temple Tomb, Mountjoy Stone, let him pass, please good Jerusalem, in a bundle of straw, he was balbaptized after haymaking. You squandered among underlings the overload of your extravagance, and made a Hottentot of Dulpenus craw sick with your crumbs. Am I not right? Yes? Yes, yes? Holy wax and holifer, don't tell me, Leon of the Fold, that you are not a loan shark. Look up, old sooty, be advised by Mookse, and take your medicine. The good doctor mulled it. Mix it twice before repastures, and powder 3 times a day. It does marvels for your gripings, and it's fine for the solitary worm. Let me finish. Just a little Judas tonic, my game of all jokes, to make you go green in the gazer. You hear what I'm seeing, Hammett? And remember that golden silence gives consent, Mr. Ankle-gazer. Cease to be civil, learn to say nay. Whisht, come here, her studiosus, till I tell you a wig in your ear. We'll do a whisper drive, for if the Barishnias got a twitter of it, they'd tell the housetops, and then all Cadbury would go crackers. Look, do you see your dial in the rocking glass? Look well. Bend down a stigmy till it's secret. Higri, I say, the boozle ears. I had it from Lamppost Shaw, and he had it from the Mullah, and Mull took it from a blue-coat schooler, and Gay Socks got it from Potiphar's wife, and Rantipole tipped the wink from old Mrs. Tinbullet. And as for she was confussed by pro-brother Cacolicus, and the good brother feels he would need to defecate you, and the flimsy Follettes are simply beside each other, and Kelly, Kenny, and Keogh are up and in arms, that a cross may crush me if I refuse to believe in it, that I may rock anchor through the ages if I hope it's not true, that the host may choke me if I be neighbour you without my charity. Shh, Shem, you are. Shh, you are mad. He points the death bone on the quicker still, insomnia, somnia, somniorum, Amen. Mercius, of hisself. Domine vobiscus. My fault, his fault, a kingship through a fault. Pariah, cannibal Cain, I, who oathily forswore the womb that bore you and the paps I sometimes sucked. You who ever since have been one black mass of jigs and jim-jams, haunted by a convulsionary sense of not having been or being all that I might have been or you meant to becoming, bewailing like a man that innocence which I could not defend, like a woman, lo, you there, Cathmon Carberry, and thank movies from the innermost depths of my still attrite heart, wherein the days of you youth are ever mixed with mine, now ere the complin hour of being alone at hands itself, and a puff or so before we yield our spiritus to the wind, for though that royal one has not yet drunk a gultlet from his consummation, and the flower-pot on the pole, the spaniel pack and their quarry, retainers and the public-house proprietor have not budged a millimetre, and all that has been done has yet to be done, and done again, when day is woe, and lo, you're doomed, joy day dawns, and la, you dominate. It is to you, firstborn and first fruit of woe, to me, branded sheep, pick of the waste-paper basket, by the tremors of Thundery and Olerin's dog-star, you alone, wind-blasted tree of the knowledge of beautiful and evil, I, clothed upon with the meteor and shimmering like the Horesans, Astrogalo-dynamonologus, the child of Nilf its father, Beelzebub, to me unseen blusher in an obscene coal-hole, the cubily-bum of your secret sigh, dweller in the down and outermost, where voice only of the dead may come, because ye left from me, because ye laughed on me, because, O me lonely son, ye are forgetting me. that our turf-brown mummy is a-coming, Alpilla, Beltilla, Siltilla, Deltilla, running with her tidings, all the news of the great big world. Sonny's had a scrap, woe, woe, woe. Bab's baby walks at 7 months, way, way, way. Bride leaves her raid at punches time. Stud stoned before a racecourse full. 2 bells that make the one appeal. Dry Yanks will visit old sod, and 4-tiered skirts are up, mesdames, while Paddy McNee wears popular short legs, and 12 hows to mix a tipsy wake. Did ye hear, Colt Cooney? Did ye ever, Philly Fortescue, with a beck, with a spring, all her rill ringlet shaking, rocks, drops in her tatchy, tram tokens in her hair, all waved to a point, and then all inundation. Little old-fashioned mummy, little wonderful mummy, ducking under bridges, bell-hopping the weirs, dodging by a bit of bog, rapid shooting round the bends, by Talloch's green hills, and the pools of the Foucar, and a place, they call it Blessington, and slipping sly by Sally Noggin, as happy as the day is wet, babbling, bubbling, chattering to herself, deludering the fields on their elbows, leaning with the sleuthering slide of her giddy-gaddy granima gossipacious Anna Livia. He lifts the life wand, and the dumb speak. Quack, 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 quack. Oh, tell me all about Anna Livia. I want to hear all about Anna Livia. Well, you know Anna Livia. Yes, of course, we all know Anna Livia. Tell me all, tell me now. You'll die when you hear. Well, you know, when the old Shem went fat and did what you know. Yes, I know. Go on. Wash, quit, and don't be dabbling. Tuck up your sleeves and loosen your talk tapes. And don't butt me, hike, when you bend. Or whatever it was they tried to make out he tried to too in the fiendish park. He's an awful old rep. Look at the shirt of him. Look at the dirt of it. He has all my water black on me, and it's steeping and stooping since this time last week. How many goes is it, I wonder, I washed it? I know by heart the places he likes to sal, the dirty devil, scorching my hand and starving my famine to make his private linen public. Wallop it well with your battle and clean it. My wrists are rusty, rubbing the mould or stains, and the neepers of wet and the gangers of sin in it. What was it he did a tale at all on Animal Sunday? And how long was he under lock and nail? It was put in the news as what he did, nices and priors, the king fierce as Humphrey, with illicit distilling, exploits and all. But Tom's will tell. I know he well. Temp untamed will hist for no man. As you spring, so shall you neep. Oh, the rotty old rap, minxing marriage and making loof. Reeve Gooch was right, and Reeve Droghad was sinistrous. And the cut of him, and the strut of him, how he used to hold his head as high as a hoath, the famous El Duke Alien, with a hump of grandeur on him like a walking weasel rat, and his Derry's own drawl, and his Cork's own blather, and his Dublin stutter, and his Galloway swank. Ask Lictor Hackett or Lector Reed of Garda Growley, or the boy with the billy club. How elster is he a-called at all? Capel? You just caput early, Fowler. Or where was he born? Or how was he found? Urgoth land? Twistown on the Cattegat? New Hampshire? Concord on the Merrimack? Who block smit her saft anvil, or yell leapt to her pale? Was her bands never loosened in Adam and Eve's, or were him and her but captain spliced? For mine ether duck I thee drake, and by my wild gaze I thee gander. Flowy and mount on the brink of time makes wishes and fears for a happy isthmus. She can show all her lines with love license to play, and if they don't remarry, that hook and I may. Oh, Passmore that, and Oxus another. Don dum dum dum, and his wee folio. Was his help insured in the Stork and Pelican against bunglers, flu and third risk parties? I heard he dug good tin with his doll, Delvin first and Dublin after, when he raped her home, Sabrina saw, in a parakeet's cage by dredgerous lands and devious depths, playing catched and mithed with the gleam of her shadow. If a flick had been there to pop up and pepper him, past old Min's manse, and maisons are fou, and the rest of incurables, and the last of immurables, the quaggy wag for stumbling. Who sold you that jack-o'-lantern's tail? Pemmicans, pasty pie, not a grass hoop to ring her, not an ant's grain of ore. In a gabbard he barked it, the boat of life, from the harbourless Idvernican Ocean, till he spied the loom of his landfall, and he loosed 2 croakers from under his tilt, the grand Phoenician rover. By the smell of her kelp they made the pigeon house. Like fun they did, but where was himself the time and year? That merchant man, he sweeved their scotties right over the wash, his camelier's burnous breezing up on him, till with his runagate bowmpress he rode and burst her bar. Pilco meo, such caught a one. And the whales away with the grayling. Tune your pipes and fall a-humming, you born Egypt, and you're nothing short of one. Well, tell me soon and curb your Eskimo. When they saw him shoot swift up her Sheba sheath, like any gay Lord Salomon, her bulls they were roaring, surfed with spree. Boyarka bua, Boyana bue. He earned his lil bun bath hard, our staly bred, the trader, he did. Look at here, in this wet of his prow. Don't you know he was called to bairn of the brine, Wasserborn, the water baby? Ave Maria, so he was. HCE has a codfiskey. Sure, she's nearly as bather as him herself. Who, Anna Livia? Aye, Anna Livia. Do you know she was calling back bandit salves from all around, Nyumbanyu, Chamberchu, to go in till him, her erring chief, and tickle the pontiff easy. She was gutter pot. Isn't that the limit? As El Negro winced when he wanced in La Plata. Oh, tell me all I want to hear, how loft she was lift a laddery extra, a coney wink after the bunting fell, letting on she didn't care, seeing a phase on me absentee, him man in possession, the proxenet. Proxenet? And what is that? Emmy for your Russisch Hondu jargon, tell us in Franca lingua, and call a spade a spade. Did they never sherry you Ebro at school, you anti-abecedarian? It's just the same as if I was to go, par exemplum now, in conservancy's cause out of telekinesis, and proxenet you. For cock's sake, and is that what she is? But little I thought she'd act that low. Didn't you spot her in her windog, wobbling up on an osier chair, with a music before her, all cuneiform letters, pretending to ribble a reedy dirge on a fiddle she bogans without a band on? Sure she can't fidden a D with bow or a band on. Sure she can't. 'Tis to suck. Well, I never now heard the like of that. Tell me more. Tell me most. Well, old Humber was as glummin as Grampus, with the tears at his thore and the buboes for ages, and neither bowman nor shot abroad, and bales all brant on the crests of Rockies, and ne'er a lamp in kitchen or church, and giant's holes in Grafton's causeway, and death-cap mushrooms round Fungless grave, and the great tribune's barrow old Darnell's accumul, sitting Sambra on his set, drammin' and drummin', asking queasy quizzers of his rueful countenance, his child linen scarf to encourage his obsequies where he checked their depths in that Mormon's Thames, bequesting and hand-settle, hop, step and a deep end, with his berths in their toiling moil, his swallower open from swalf to fore, and the snipes of the gutter pecking his crocks, hunger striking all alone and holding doomsdag over himself, breeing his weird with his dander up and his fringe combed over his eggs, and droaming on loft till the sight of the starns, after swarthy cows and weedy brooks, and the tits of body and the lights of pest, and to peer was parish worth that mess. You'd think all was Dodo belonging to him, how he dermed the drance in Durance Val. He had been belching for 7 years, and there she was, Anna Livia. She dared catch a winkle of sleep, purling around like a chit of a child, wenda, a finger thick, in a lap summer skirt and damazon cheeks, for to ishim bonjour to her dear Dubber Dan, with Euphrates and salt from his Magyas. And an odd time she'd cook him up blooms of fisk, and lay to his heart's foot her medery eggs, yais, and Stanish beacons on toast, and a cup and half so wishy-washy of Greenland's tay, or a zup can of Kafue Mokau and Sable, or Shijiang Sukri, or his ale of ferns in Truart Pewter, and a shinko bread, ham jumbo bana, for to please that man hog stay his stomacher, till her Pyrenees shrunk to nutmeg graters, while her toggle joints shook with goit, and as rash as she'd rust with her peak-load of vivers up on her sieve, met a where o' rage it swales and reases, my hardy heck he'd cast them from him, with a stour of scorn, as much as to say, you sow and you soge, and if he didn't peg the plateau on her taw, believe you me she was safe enough. And then she'd ask to vistula him, the heart bowed down, or the rakes of Mallow, or Kelly Michele's Le Calumnia e un Vermicelli, or a Balfi bit of old Joe Robinson. Such o fuffing of fifing 'twould cut you in two. She'd bake the hen that crowed on the Torres of Babel. What harm if she knew how to cockle her mouth, and not a mag out of him, no more than out of the mangle weight? Is that a fate? That's a fact. Then, riding the Ricca and Roya Romanche, Anona, gebroren aristocrat, Nivea, dochter of sense and art, with sparks piriflicketims funkling her fan, and of frost-evying tresses dashed with fireflies, while the prom beauties shrieked neath their bearers' skins, in a period gown of changeable jade, that would robe the wood of two cardinals' chairs and crush poor Cullen and smother McCabe. Oh, blazerskate! There's pawpaw patches, and bramming to him down the feed chute, with her 56 kinds of fondling endings, the pooth rambling off her nose, Vuggy Barney, Wickery Mandy, hello ducky, please don't die. Do you know what she started cheeping after with a choicey voicey, like Water Glucks, or Madame Delbart or Romeo Resk? You'll never guess. Tell me. Phoebe, dearest, tell me, and I loved you better nor you knew. And letting on hone var daft about the warbly songs from over Holmen, high head-skirts or ladies' hen smoke a lily-hung pegger, and so on and so forth in a tone sonora, and both her below like Berry in his sandy cloak, so umvelosi, as deaf as a yawn, the stut. Go away. Poor dear dearie, you're only teasing. Anna live, as chalk is my judge. And didn't she up in sorgs and go and trot doon and stand in her door, puffing her old Ogene, and every servant silly girl o' winsome farmerette walking the Pyland roads, soy, Fundally, Dairy o' Mary, Malooker, Awny o' Graw, usen't she make her simp or sign to slip inside by the Sully port? You don't say the silly post? Betwixt but I do, calling them in one by one, to block Bedham here the shoe Benacaddy, and legging a jig or so on the seal to show them how to shake their benders, and the dainty how to bring to mind the gladdest garments out of sight, and all the way of a maid with a man, and making a sort of a cackling noise like 2 and a penny or half a crown, and holding up a silver shiner. Lordy, did she so? Well, of all the ones ever I heard, throwing all the nice little whores in the world at him, to any captured wench you wish of no matter what sex of pliceful ways, 2 at a tamer, a Lizzie a lassie, to hug and have haven in Humpy's apron. And what was the wiry rima she made? Oh, death. Tell me the trend of it while I'm lathering hail out of Dennis Florence McCarthy's combis. Rise it, flutch ye, pian pianer. I'm dying down off my iodine feet until I learn Anne Olivia's cushing glue that was writ by one and read by two and trued by a pool in the parko. I can see that. I see you are. How does it tumble? Listen now. Are you listening? Yes. Indeed I am. Turn your oar out. As sun in. By earth and the cloudy, but I badly want a brand new bankside, be damp and I do, and a plumper at that. For the purty affair I have is wore out, so it is, sitting, yaping and waiting for my old Dane hodder dodder, my life in death companion, my frugal key of our larder, my much-altered camel's hump, my joint spoiler, my May moon's honey, my fool to the last December, to wake himself out of his winter's doze and bore me down like he used to. Is there well a lord of the manor or a knight of the shire at strike, I wonder, that had dipped me a dace or two in cash for washing and darning his worshipful socks for him, now we're run out of horse brose and milk? Only for my short British bed, maids as snug as it smells, it's out I'd left and off with me to the slobs de la Tulka, or the plage o' Clontarf, to feel the gay air of my salt troubling bay, and the race that the sea wind up me embouchure. On, tell me more. Tell me every tiny thing. I want to know every single ingle, down to what made the potters fly into Yagd's hall. And why were the vessels wet? That Homer fever's winning me warm. If a mahan of the horse but hard me, we be bunduki boy meet Ascari gal. Well, now comes the hazel hatchery part. After Clondalkin, the King's Inns. We'll soon be there with the freshet. How many levins had she in Toul? I can't rightly read you that. Close only knows. Some say she had 3 figures to fill, and confined herself to 111, one by one, making me and a common amoyas. Olaf Lammet, all that packed. We won't have room in the kirkyard. She can't remember half of the cradle names she smacked on them by the grace of her boxing bishop's infallible slipper, the cane for cont, and apples for Eolf, and either nather for Yaakov Yea. 100 and how? They did well to rechristen her, Pluhurabel. Oh, Lorelei, what a lodden loads. Hey-ho, but it's quite on the cards she'll shed more and merrier, twills and trills, spare 4s and spoil 5s, Nord 6 and suds evers and eyes and 9s to a litter. Grandfathering nap and mess of misery, and the knave of all knaves and the joker. Hee-haw. She must have been a gadabout in her day, so she must, more than most. Sure she was, good gad. She had a few men of her own. Then a toss ne'er scared that lass. So mo, that's Agapo. Tell me, how cam she camlin through all her fellows, the neck as she was, the diviline? Casting her perils before our swains, from Fontaine Monte to Tiding Town, and from Tiding Town till Habit, linking one and knocking the next, tapping a flank and tipting a jutty, and pawling in and petering out, and gliding by on her east way. Why, who was the first forever burst? Someone he was, whoever they were, in a tactic attack or in single combat. Tinker, tiler, soldier, sailor, pieman, piece, or policeman. That's the thing I'm always on the edge to ask. Push up and push farther and come to uphill headquarters. Was it Waterloo's year after Grattan or flood, or when maids were in ark, or when 3 stood hosting? Fideris will find where the doubt arises, like Nieman from Nergens found the nihil. What are you sighing for? I'll bear no answer. Untie the gemmen's fistinots, quick and no answer. She can't put her hand on him for the moment. 'Tis the long, lang low, walking weary, such a loon way bashwards to roll. She said herself she hardly knows who in the annals her graveller was, a dynast of Leinster, a wolf of the sea, or what he did, or how blithe she played, or how, when, why, where, and who often he jumped at her, and how it was gave her away. She was just a young, thin, pale, soft, shy, slim slip of a thing then, sauntering by Silver Moon Lake, and he was a heavy, trudging, lurching lie-abroad of a curra man, making his hay for whose sun to shine on, as tough as the oak trees, peace be with them, used to rustle that time down by the dykes of Killare, for first fell Foss with a plash across her. She thought she sank neath the ground with nymph and shame when he gave her the tigress eye. Oh, happy fault, me wish it was he. You're wrong there, horribly wrong. 'Tisn't only tonight you're anachronistic. It was ages behind that, when nullers were nowhere, in County Wickenlow, Garden of Erin, before she ever dreamt she'd leave Kilbride and go foaming on the horse-past bridge, with the great south or western wind storming her traces, and the Midlands grain waster a search for her track, to wend her ways by and by, Rebecca or worse, to spin and to grind, to swab and to thrash, for all her golden lifey in the barley fields and penny lots of Humphreys Ford of Hurdlestown, and lie with a land leaper, Wellington Orser. Alas, the Lagos of girly days, for the dove of the dunes, was it? Is it? Are you certain sure? Not where the Finn fits into the morn, not where the Nor takes leave of bloom, not where the braid of Arts the fairer, not where the Moy changes her minds twixt Cullen and Con, tween Con and Colin, or when Neptune sculled and Tritonville rode, and Leandro's 3 bumped heroines too? Nay, a narev, nen nonny, nos. Then whereabouts in Ow and Avoca? Was it east with west, or Lucan Yoken, or where the hand of man has never set foot? Tell me where the fairy first time. I will, if you'll listen. You know the Dinkle Dale of Lugalaw. Well, there once dwelt a local heremite. Michael Arklow was his reverend name. With many a sigh I aspersed his lava bids. And one Venus Durgan June or July, oh, so sweet and so cool and so limber she looked, Nance the Nixie, Nanon Lescaut, in the silence of the sycamores, all listening, the kindling curves you simply can't stop feeling, he plunged both of his newly anointed hands, the core of his cushlers, in her Singy-Marie saffron strumens of hair, parting them and soothing her and mingling it, that was deep, dark and ample, like this red bog at sundown. By that veil Vauclose's lucid lack, the rainbow's heaven arches arranged oranged her. Afroth dizzying garbs, her enamelled eyes undergoading him on to the vierge violation. Wish a wish, why a why, Mavro, Letty lurks laughing light throw those laurels now on her daft tea song Petra. Mass, but the magic Wavis has Elphanan on meshes, and Simba the slayer of his Oga is slewed. He could not help himself, thirst so that hot on him, he had to forget the monk in the man, so rubbing her up and smoothing her down, he bathed his lips in smiling mood, kiss a kiss after kiss a cush, as he warned her never to, never, on Anana Pogues of the freckled forehead. While you'd pause Secheressa, she healed her sooth, but she rose 2 feet higher in her ain estimation, and steps on stilts ever since. That was Kiswa healing with Bantur for balm. Oh, wasn't he the bold priest, and wasn't she the naughty Livy? Naughty Namas now her navn. 2 lads in Scouch breeches went through her before that, Barefoot Byrne and Wallamy Wade, looking Aquilia's noblest Picts, before she had a hint of a hair at her fanny to hide, or a bosom to tempt a birch canoodler, not to mention a Belgic porterhouse barge. And ere that again lead a leda all unready, too faint to buoy the fairiest rider, too frail to flirt with a cygnet's plume, she was licked by a hound, Chiripachiruta, while pooing her pea, pure and simple, on the spur of the hill in old Kipure, in bird song and shearing time. But first of all, worst of all, the wiggly lively, she side-slipped out by a gap in the Devil's Glen, while Sally, her nurse, was sound asleep in a sloot, and fee-fee-fi-fi fell over a spillway before she found her stride, and lay and wriggled in all the stagnant black pools of rainy under a fallow coo, and she laughed innis-free with her limbs aloft, and a whole drove of maiden hawthorns blushing and looking askance upon her. Dropped me the sound of the Findhorn's name, too warm tea, some bogger was witness. And dripped me why in the Flenders was she frickled, and trickled me through was she Marcella waved, or was it weirdly a wig she wore? And which side did they droop their glows in their flurry, a back to whist or a front to see? In fear to hear the deer so near, or longing loath and loathing longing. Are you in the swim, or are you out? Oh, go in, go on, go on. I mean about what you know. I know right well what you mean, Rother. You'd like the coifs and gants, snouty, and me to do the greasy job on old Veronica's wipers. What am I rancing now, and I'll thank you? Is it a penny or is it a surplus? Aaron, where's your nose? And where's the starch? That's not the Vester benediction smell. I can tell from here by their eau de cologne and the scent of her odour there, Mrs. McGrath. And you ought to have aired them. They've moist come off her. Creases in silk they are, not Crampton lawn. Baptist me father, for she has sinned. Through her catchment ring she freed them easy, with her hips hurrahs for her knees dentilleries. The only pair with frills in all the plain. So they are, I declare. Well and well. If tomorrow keeps fine, who'll come tripping to sightsee? How'll? Ask me next what I haven't got. The Belvederian exhibitioners in their cruisery caps and oars clubbed collars. What who they band, and what ho they buck. And here is her nubily letters too, Ellis on K and scarlet thread, linked for the world on a flush-coloured field, and an X after to show they're not Laura Keown's. Oh, may the diabolo twist your safety pin, you child of Mammon Kinsella's Lilith. Now, who has been tearing the leg of her drawers on her? Which leg is it? The one with the bells on it. Rinse them out and stan along with you. Where did I stop? Never stop. Continuation. You're not there yet. I am still waiting. Get on, get on. Well, after it was put in the mercy cordial mendicant Sitterdag Sinde Monade Wake shrift, for once they sullied their white kid gloves, chewing cuds after their dinners of cheekin and begging, with their show us it here and their mind out of that, and their when you're quite finished with the reading material. Even the snay that snowed on his hoaring hair had a scunner against him. To, sava savuto, score her chuff esquire. Everywhere if you went and every bung you ever dropped into, in sit or suburb or in addled areas, the Rose and Bottle or Phoenix Tavern or Powers Inn or Jude's Hotel, or wherever you scoured the countryside from Nanny Water to Vatryville or from Portalatine to the Luton Quarter, you found his icon etched tip-side down, or the corner boys come mocking his Guy and Morris the man with the roll of a Royce in his Turgos the Terrible. Evropy handshake house, unskimmed suet and yahourt, Haman now cheek me, Adam this way make, Fatima half-turn, reeling and railing round the local as the peos piped and the banjees twanged, with Oddfellow's triple tiara Busby rotunda rinking round his scalp, like pate by the neighbour or Pete over mare. This is the houseman all paven and stoned, that cribbed the cabin that never was owned, that cocked his leg and henned his egg, and the mauldron rabble around him in areopage, fracassing a great Bincan Cagnan with their timpan crowders. Mind your grim father. Think of your ma. Hing the hong as his Joves hang nomen. Lilt a bolero bulling a law. She swore on crossed sticks 9 windabouts she's be level with all the snags of them yet, par the vulnerable virgins Mary del Dam. So she said to herself, she'd frame a plan to fake a shine, the mischief maker, the like of it you never heard. What plan? Tell me quick and dongo so crude. What the murder did she mag? Well, she burgoned a zack bag, a chamois mail sack, with the lend of a loan of the light of his lampion of one of her swap sons, Sean the post, and then she went and consulted her chapbooks, old Montmoor, Case's Euclid, and the fashion display, and made herself tidal to join in the masquerade. Oh, gig goggle of giggles, I can't tell you how. It's too screaming to Rizzo rabbit at all. Minnie ha, minnie hi, minnie hey, minnie ho. Oh, but you must, really. Make my hear it gurgle, gurgle, like the fairest gargle, gargle in the dusky durgle, dargle. By the holy well of Mulhuddart, I swear I'd pledge my chance of getting to heaven through Tyrian Killy's mount of impiety to hear it all, every word. Oh, leave me my faculties, woman, a while. If you don't like my story, get out of the punt. Well, have it your own way, so. Here, sit down and do as you're bid. Take my stroke and bend to your bow. Forward in, and pull yer over the poise. Lisp it slaney and crisp it quiet. Deal me longsome. Tongue your time now. Breathe that deep. Thou what's the fair way. Hurry slow and skelch you go. Lend us your blessed ashes here till I scrub the cannon's underpants. Flow now, o'er more, and pooly. First she let her hair fall, and down it fluss to her feet, its teddy, its winding coils. Then, mother naked, she samwent pistania mud, whopper and lower from crown to sole. Next she greased the groove of her keel, warths and wares and mole and itcher, with anti-fouling butterscotch and turf and tide and serpentine, and with leaf mould she ushered round prunella isles and eslats done, quince cont, all over her little Mary. Peeled gold of waxwork her jelly belly, and her grains of incense anguil bronze. And after that she wove a garland for her hair. She pleated it, she plaited it, of meadow grass and river flags, the bulrush and waterweed, and of fallen griefs of weeping willow. Then she made her bracelets, and her anklets, and her armlets, and a jetty amulet for necklace of clicking cobbles and pattering pebbles and rumble down rubble, Richmond and rare, of Irish runa rhiner stones and shell marble bangles. That done, a dawk of smut to her airy eye, Anushka Lutesievich Poflova, and the lilipas cream to her lipolines, and the pick of the paint box for her pomettes, from strawberry reds to extra violets, and she sendered her boudoir maids to his affluence, Chilegia Grande and Kirshi Real, the two cursings, with respects from his missus, Seepy and Sori, and a request might she pass of him for a minikin. A call to pay, and light a taper, in brie on a rosa, back in a spritzling. The cock striking mine, the stalls bridely signed, there's Sambosi waiting for me. She said she wouldn't be half her length away. Then, as soon as the lump his back was turned, with her mealy bag slang over her shoulder, Anne Olivia, oyster face, forth of her basin came. Describe her. Hustle along, why can't you? Spits on the iron while it's hot. I wouldn't miss her for earthing on earth, not for the lucre of Lomber Strait. Oceans of God, I mustn't hear that. I'll go presta, lest before Julia sees her. Isha carry and wash him his scad, the carashi carrot him any. Whole lady fair, duo decimaroon, Bonaventura, Malagasy. What had she on, the little loud oddity? How much did she scallop harness and weights? Here she is, Amnesty Anne. Call her calamity electrifies man. No electress at all, but old mop of necessity, engine mother of engines. I'll tell you a test, but you must sit still. Will you hold your peace and listen well to what I'm going to say now? It might have been 10 or 20 to 1 of the night of all close, or the next of April, when the flip of her hoogly igloo flappered, and out toe-tipped a bushman woman, the dearest little mama ever you saw, nodding around her all smiles, with M's of embarrass and O's to awe, between two ages, a Judy queen, not up to your elp. Quick, look at her cute and says her quirk, for the bigger she lives, the slicker she grows. Save us and take us. No more? Where in earth did you ever pick a lambe chop as big as a battering ram? Aye, you're right. I'm apt to forgetting, like Livium Liddle did love me long. The length of my hock, I say. She wore a ploughboy's nail-studded clogs, a pair of plough fields in themselves, a sugar-loaf hat with a gaudy quivery peak, and a band of gorse for an ornament, and 100 streamers dancing off it, and a gilded pin to pierce it. Owl-glassy bicycles boggled her eyes, and a fishnet's veil for the sun not to spoil the wrinklings of her hide aspects. Potato rings buckled to the loose lobes of her loud snares. Her nude Cuba stockings were salmo spot speckled. She sported a galligo shimmy of haze vapor tinto that never was fast till it ran in the washing. Stout stays, the rivals, lined her length. Her blood-orange bock knickers, a 2-in-1 garment, showed natural nigger-boggers fancy-fastened, free to undo. Her black striped tan Joseph was sequin sewn and teddy bear lined, with wavy rush green epaulettes, and a lay down here and there of royal swan's ruff. A brace of gaspers stuck in her hay rope garters. Her civvy corduroy coat with alphabet buttons was boundaried round with a 2-bar tunnel belt. A 4-penny bit in each pocket side weighed her safe from the blow-away windrush. She had a clothes pegged tight astride on her jockey's nose, and she kept on grinding a something quaint in her fumy mouth, and the rake of the fluve of the tail of the gowan of her snuff-drab solar skirt trailed 50-odd Irish miles behind her longer roads. Hell's bells, I'm sorry I missed her. Sweet gumptium, and nobody fainted. But in welk of her mouth was her nase alight. Every one that saw her said the douse little Delia looked a bit queer. Lotsy trotsy, mind the puddle. Mrs. Be good and don't fall in the say. Fenny poor hex she must have charred. Kick'em's the frumpier ever you saw, making mushmullet's eyes at her boys Dublin. And they crowned her their Carriton Queen, all the maids. Of the May, you don't say. Well, for her, she couldn't see herself. I reckon it's wherefore the darling murried her mirror. She did. Mercy me. There was a chorus of drought-dropping surface men, boom slanging and plug chewing, fruit eyeing and flower feeding, in contemplation of the fluctuation and the undification of her filamentation, lolling and leasing on North Laza's wall all Eelfair week by the Duke of York's. And as soon as they saw her meander by that maritime way in her grass-winter's weeds, and twigged who was under her archdeaconess bonnet, Avondale's fish and Clarence's poison, Sedge's and whenever, wit upon crutches to Master Bates, between our 2 south sates and the granite they're warming, or her face has been lifted, or Alpha's doped. But what was the game in her mixed baggy ratty? Just the tembo in her tumbo, or pili-pili from her pepper pot? Sass and tass and spaces bizarres? And where and ponder did she plunder? For the battle, or after the ball? I want to get it frisk from the source. I bet my biarbit's worthwhile poaching on. Shake it up, do. That's a good old son of a ditch. I promise I'll make it worth your while. And I don't mean maybe, nor yet with a good for. Spay me proof and I'll tell you true. Well, a run gerund in a waveny line, a ring around her, she pattered and swung and sidled, dribbling her boulder through narrower mosses, the dilliskied rear on our drier side, and the vile vetch vine a Guinness, curara here, careero there, not knowing which midway or ways to strike it, either either, making Chattahoochee all to her ancient chew, like Santa Claus at the cree of the pale and puny, nistling to hear for their tiny hearties, her arms encircling Isolabella, then running with reconciled Romus and Reams, on like a lech to be off like a dart, then bathing dirty hands spatters with spittle, with a Christmas box apiece for each and every one of her children, the birthday gifts they dreamt they gave her, the spoils she fleetly laid at our door. On the mat, by the porch, and in under the cellar, the rivulets ran a flood to see the Glasha boys, the Polynooties, out of the pawn shop onto the pyre, and they all about her, juvenile leads and ingenuinas, from the slime of their slums and artisan dwellings, rickets and riots, like the smiley boys at their viceroy's levee. Vivi bien, little ancient. Philo Anna, high life. Sing us a sula, old Susuria, o sonne si dulcis. Hasn't she timbre? Chipping her and raising a bit of a cheer or a jarry every dive she'd neb in her culdy sacco of wabash, she rabbed and reach out her Maundy merchandise. Poor souvenir as per recorder, and all for sore ringerung, stinkers and healers, laggards and prime lads, her furs-born sons and dribblederry daughters, 1,001 of them, and wicker pot luck for each of them, for evil and ever, and kicks the book. A tinker's ban, and a barrow to boil his billy for Gypsy Lee, a cartridge of cockaleeky soup for Chummy the guardsman, for Sulky Pender's acid nephew, deltoid drops, curiously strong, a cough and a rattle and wild rose cheeks, for poor Piccolina Petite Macfarlane. A jigsaw puzzle of needles and pins and blankets and shins between them for Isabel, Jezebel and Llewellyn marriage. A brazen nose and pig iron mittens for Johnny Walker Begg. A paper flag of the saints and stripes for Kevinine O'Day. A puff-puff for Pudge Craig, and a night marching hare for Tecker Tim Tom Bigby. Water leg and gumboots each for Bully Hayes and Hurricane Hartigan. A prodigal heart and fatted calves for Buck Jones, the pride of Clonliffe. A loaf of bread and a father's early aim for Val from Skibbereen. A jaunting car for Larry Doolan, the Ballyclee Jackeen. A seasick trip on a government ship for Teague O'Flanagan. A louse and trap for Jerry Coyle. Slush mince pies for Andy Mackenzie. A hair clip and clack dish for Penciless Peter. That 12 sounds look for G.V. Brooke. A drowned doll to face downwards for modest sister Anne Mortimer. Altar falls for Blanche's bed. Wild Airs breechettes for Magpeg Wappington. To Sue Dot a big eye. To Sam Dash a false step. Snakes in clover picked and scotched, and a Vatican viper catcher's visa for Patsy Presbys. A rise every morning for Standfast Dick, and a drop every minute for Stumblestone Davy. Scrub oak beads for Beatified Biddy. 2 apple tweed stools for Ava Mobley. For Sarah Philpott, a Jordan veiled Huron. A pretty box of Pettifib's powder for Eileen Aruna to whiten her teeth and outflash Helen Arone. A whipping top for Eddie Lawless. For Kitty Coleraine of Bottomman's Lane, a Pennywise for her foolish pitcher. A potty shovel for Terry the Puck-on. An hippopotamus mask for Promoter Dunn. An Easter egg with a twice-dated shell and a dynamite right for Pavel the Curate. A cholera morbus for Man in the Cloak. A Star and Girton for Draper and Dean. For Will of the Wisp and Barney the Bark, 2 mangoes noble to sweeten their bitters. For Oliver Bound away in his fray. For Seamus, though little the crown he feels big, a Tibertine's pile with a Congo's wood cross on the back for Sonny Twim Jim. A praises be and spare me days for Brian the Bravo. Pent a plenty of pity with Luby lashings of lust for Alona Lena Magdalena. For Camilla, Dromilla, Ludmilla, Mamilla, a bucket, a packet, a book and a pillow. For Nancy Shannon, a 2 of me brooch. For Dora Reparia, Hope and Water, a cooling douche and a warming pan. A pair of Blarney Brags for Wally Maher. A hairpin slate pencil for Elsie Oram to scratch her Toby, doing her best with her vulgar fractions. An old age pension for Betty Bellezza. A bag of the blues for Funny Fitz. A Missa Promessa for Taff to Taff. Jill, the spoon of a girl for Jack, the broth of a boy. A Rogerson Crusoe's Friday fast for Caducus Angelus Rubiconstein. 366 Poplantine for Reverie Warp in the Weaver's Woof for Victor Huguenot. A stiff-steaded rake and good variance muck for Kate the Cleaner. A hole in the ballad for Husty. 2 dozen of cradles for JFXP Coppinger. 10 pountain on the pop for the dolphins born with 5 spoiled squibs for Infanta. A letter to last a lifetime for Maggie beyond the ash pit. The heftiest frozen meat woman from Lusk to Livianbad for Phelim the Ferry. Spas and Speranza and Symposium syrup for decayed and blind and gouty Goff. A change of knaves and joy of ills for Armoricus Tristram Amour St. Lawrence. A guillotine shirt for Reuben Redbreast and hempen suspendits for Brennan on the Moor. An oaken knee for Conditor Sawyer and mosquito bites for Great Tropical Scott. A C3 peduncle for Carmelite Kane, a sunless map of the month, including the sword and stamps for Seamus O'Shawn the Post, a jackal with hide for Brown but Nolan, a stone-cold shoulder for Don Jovance. All lock and no stable for Honor Bright Merritrix, a big drum for Billy Dunboyne, a guilty goldeny bellows, below me blow me for Ida Ida, and a hushaby rocka El Truva too for Who is Sylvia, Where is he? Whatever you like to swilly to swash, Yennis or Yennesy, Largan or Niger, for Festus King and Roaring Peter and Frisky Shorty and Treacle Tom and O.B. Bain and Sully the Thug and Master McGrath and Peter Cloran and O'Delawar Rosser and Neroni McPatchem and whoever you chance to meet knocking around. And a pig's bladder balloon for Selina Susquehanna Stakelum. But what did she give to Pruda Ward and Catty Cannon and Peggy Quilty, and Briery Brosna, and Teasy Kieran, and Ina Lappin, and Muriel Massey, and Susan Camack, and Melissa Bradog, and Flora Ferns, and Fauna Fox Goodman, and Gretna Graney, and Penelope Ingle Santi, and Lesba Licking, and Leitha Liane, and Roxana Rowan, with Sympatica Sohan, and Una Bina La Terza, and Trina Lamame, and Philomena O'Farrell, and Irma Kelly, and Josephine Foyle, and Snake's Head Lily, and Fountainoy Laura, and Mary Xavier Agnes Daisy Francis de Sales Macleay. She gave them Ilka Madre's daughter, a moonflower and a blood vein, but the grapes that ripe before reason to them that divide the vine dress. So on Issy, her shame made, love shone befond her tears, as from Shem, her penmite, life past befouled his prime. My colonial, water bagful, a bakerines dozened with tithe tillies to boot. That's what you may call a tale of a tub, and Hibernonian market. All that and more under one crinoline envelope, if you dare to break the pork barrel seal. No wonder they'd run from her pison plague. Throw us your Hudson soap for the honour of Clane. The wee taste the water left. I'll raft it back first thing in the morn. Merced mull. Aye, and don't forget the records I loaned you. You've all the swirls your side of the current. Well, am I to blame for that if I have? Who said you're to blame for that if you have? You're a bit on the sharp side. I'm on the wide. Only Snuffer's cornets drifts my way that the cracked vine chucks out of his cassock, with her Esther Year's marsh narcissus to make him recant his Vanity Fair. Foul strips of his Chinook's Bible I do be reading, dod well disgusted, but chickled with chuckles at the tittles is drawn on the tattle page. Senor Gardito, faciasi homo, e homo fuffo. Ho ho! Senor Gardito, faciasi idamo, idamo sega facessa. Ha ha! And Die Windemere Dichter, and Le Fanu Sheridan's old House by the Coachyard, and Mill J on Woman with ditto on the floss. Yeah, a swamp for Ardmiller and a stone for his flossies. I know how racy they move his wheel. My hands are blaw cold between Iska and Soda, like that piece of Parent Cheney there lying below. Or where is it? Lying beside the sedge, I saw it. Ho and ho, my sorrow, I've lost it. Ay me, with that Turbury water who could see? So near, and yet so far. But oh, get on, I love it a gabber. I could listen to more and more aver again. Rain on the river, flies do your float. Thick is the life for me. Well, you know, or don't you ken it, or haven't I told you, every telling has a tailing, and that's the he and the she of it. Look, look, the dusk is growing. My branches lofty are taking root, and my cord chair's gone ashly. Filur, Filur, what age is that? Its sound is late. 'Tis endless now, sin I or e'er one last saw Waterhouse's clock. They took it asunder, I heard them sigh. When will they reassemble it? Oh, my back, my back, my back. I'd want to go to Aixley Pains. Ping pong. There's the bell for Sexoloitus and Concepta Descendus Prey. Bang. Ring out the clothes, ring in the dew. God of our avert the showers and grant thy a grace, a man. Will we spread them here now? Aye, we will. Flip. Spread on your bank, and I'll spread mine on mine. Flip. It's what I'm doing. Spread. It's churning chill. Derwent is rising. I lay a few stones on the hostel sheets. A man and his bride embraced between them, else I'd have sprinkled and folded them only. And I'll tie my butcher's apron here. It's suety yet. The strollers will pass it by. 6 shifts, 10 kerchiefs, 9 to hold to the fire, and this for the code. The convent napkins, 12, 1 baby shawl. Good Mother Joseph knows, she said. Whose head? Mutter snores? Deatachias. Where now are all her children, say? In kingdom gone, or power to come, or glory be to them, Father? Alluvial, alluvial, some here more, no more, more again lost, a stranger. I've heard tell that same brooch of the Shannons was married into a family in Spain, and all the Dunders, the Duns and Markland's Vineland beyond Brendan's herring pool takes number 9 in Yanksy's hats. And one of Biddy's beads went bobbing till she rounded up lost history with a marigold and a cobbler's candle in a side strain of a main drain of a man's and hurries off bachelor's walk. But all that's left of the last of the matters in the loop of the years prefixed and between is one knee buckle and 2 hooks in the front. Do you tell me that now? I do in troth. O rara por orbe and pur las animas. Ossa alla we're umbas all. Measure didn't you hear it a deluge of times, oofer and oofer, respond to spond? You did, you did. I need. It's that here a wadding I've stoke in my arse. It all but husheth the leetest swound. Oh, Ranoko, what's your trouble? Is that the great Finn leader himself in his joe kimono on his statue, riding the high horse there for Hengist? Father of utters, it is himself. Yon there, is it that? On Fallerine Common? You're thinking of Astley's amphitheatre, where the bobby restrained you making sugar-stock pouts to the ghost-white horse of the Peppers. Throw the cobwebs from your eyes, woman, and spread your washing proper. It's well I know your sort of slop. Flap. Ireland sober is Ireland stiff. Lord help you, Maria, full of grease, the load is with me. Your prayers. I sont so, Madam Mangot. Were you lifting your elbow, tell us glazy cheeks, in Conway's Carrigacorra canteen? Was I what, hobbledy-hips? Flop. Your rear gates creak o' Roman, bits your butts disagrees. Amn't I up since the damp dawn, Martha and Mary Allacook, with Corrigan's pulse and varicose veins, my pram axles smashed, Alice Jane in decline, and my one-eyed mongrel twice run over, soaking and bleaching boiler rags, and sweating cold, a widow like me, for to deck my tennis champion son, the laundry man with the lavender flannels? You won your limp-o-po limp from the husky hussars when collars and cuffs was heir to the town, and your slur gave the stink to Carlo. Holy scamander, I saw it again, near the Golden Falls. Ice is on us, saints of light, see there. Subdue your noise, you hambled creature. What is it but a blackberry growth, or the Dwyer grey ass them 4 old codgers owns? Are you mean 'em Tarpey and Lyons and Gregory? I mayn't now thank all the 4 of them, and the roar of them that draves that stray in the mist, and old Johnny McDougal along with them. Is that the Poolbeg flasher beyond, far, far? Or a fireboat coasting near the Kishna? Or a glow I behold within a hedge, or my Gary come back from the Indies? Wait till the honeying of the loon, love. Die, Eve, little Eve, die. We see that wonder in your eye. We'll meet again, we'll part once more. The spot I'll seek, if the hour you'll find. My chart shines high where the blue milk's upset. Forgive me quick, I'm going. Bye-bye. And you, pluck your watch, forget me not. Your even load, so safe to journey's end. My sights are swimming thicker on me by the shadows to this place. I so home slowly now, by own way, my valley way. To I too, Rathmine. Ah, but she was the queer old Scotia anyhow, and Olivia Trinket does. And sure, he was the queer old bunce too, dear dirty dumpling, foster father of Fingals and Dothergills. Gammer and Gaffer were all their gangsters. Hadn't he 7 dams to wive him? And every dam had her 7 crutches, and every crutch had its 7 hues, and each hue had a differing cry. Suds for me, and supper for you, and the doctor's bill for Joe John. Before, he married his markets cheap by foul, I know, like any Etrurian Catholic heathen, in their pinky, lemony, creamy burnies, and their Turkish Indian mauves. But at Milkid Mass, who was the spouse? Then all that was fair. 'Tis elven land, teems of times and happy returns, the same anew, ordo vico or viricordo. Anna was, Livia is, plurabels to be. Northmen's thing made South folks' place, but how multiplurators made each one in person. Latin me that, my Trinity scholard, out of your sans creed into our Aryan. Hircus civis eblanensis. He had buck-goat paps on him, soft ones for orphans. Oh, Lord, twins of his bosom, Lord save us. And ho, eh? What all men? What? His tittering daughters of. Hawk? Can't hear with the waters of, the chittering waters of. Flittering bats, field mice balk, talk. Ho, are you not gone a home? What, Tom Malone? Can't hear with balk of bats, all them liffying waters of. Oh, talk save us. My foos won't moose. I feel as old as yonder elm. A tale told of Sean or Shem, all Livia's daughter sons. Dark hawks hear us, night, night. My whole head halls. I feel as heavy as yonder stones. Tell me, of John or Sean? Who are Shem and Sean, the living sons or daughters of? Night now. Tell me, Elm. Night, night. Tell me tale of stem or stone, beside the rivering waters of, hither and thithering waters of. Night.